I mean, the purpose would be to make that connection to sixth grade, but where are they with sixth grade, I guess would be my.
Yeah, they start with 12.
Are they meeting?
Well, they were gonna start with 12th and then go to sixth grade,
Oh, okay.
but have they done that? I mean, so my thing is, if our purpose is to connect fifth and sixth grade, where are they with sixth grade? Because if we go in with fifth grade, we can go ahead and say, this is, and we can show them in the Dropbox what we've done with fifth grade.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to meet with them at that.
The
But
only
to
other
talk to
purpose
them
would be
about
talked about the sort of the
Oh,
structure.
that.
But that could be done in an email.
Exactly.
I mean, would we be better, I don't know if they're meeting the 21st or not, 20th or 21st, I have no idea, but, I mean, set aside, I mean, I
I
said we
think
could
they
finish
are
fifth
meeting
grade
on the
today.
20th.
Hopefully.
I mean,
I
hopefully
talked
we
to-
finish fifth grade today, at
I
least we would
talked to
have
somebody
something.
on the team last night. They are meeting
They are, okay, I didn't
those
know.
days, but I don't know where they're meeting.
We put in the request
Okay,
for us
Put
to
them in
be
the
at the
same
same
building.
place.
okay.
And I just thought if we set aside something then, we would have hopefully fifth grade kind of done. And honestly, by the time, because, you know, my goal is to take what we've done today with this, and I'm taking it back to our people to look at. Then if we met and then kind of talked about some of the comments that we got back and then schedule that meeting with them. And if they know it's in advance too, then at least they might have a target to,
Yeah.
to do something with sixth grade rather than show up this afternoon and go,
Right,
hey,
so,
we're ready to talk, but
so right now the goal, so we'll say we're not gonna meet, but we can communicate with them via email, share what we've worked on and share our ideas sort of about the structure. And then and then ideally next time when we come together and
just
have
set
a quick,
aside some time, yeah.
have a quick meeting then.
Okay.
So that's just a
Today-
thought, that's just a thought.
Let's try and get through fifth grade. We hit a snag here.
I'm gonna pass them
What was
around.
our
Anybody
snag?
want to get on this?
Well, okay, so we're in number, no thanks.
I think
Well,
mine's
actually,
nine.
yes. I changed my mind. So we're in number and operations, with fractions. We're on the second point. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we got our first one in, we have added and subtract fractions with unlike denominators, including mixed numbers. We haven't exactly written what we want with multiplication and division. So the thing Myra and I put in that I think Janet might have said was just multiply and divide fractions, including mixed numbers. But we had lots of discussion going on around this multiplying and dividing.
Would it help to flip back and look at flip grades at all?
Well, I think it's probably helpful to look across, wherever, right, to California, to Massachusetts, or wherever, and see what you can find.
Well, Massachusetts lays it out even with most of the sixth grade. And if you're talking, it says accurately and efficiently add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive fractions and mixed numbers, simplify fractions. That's what it says.
Let's see, I'm looking at California. And it says, there are three. Solve simple problems, including ones arising in concrete situations involving the addition and subtraction of fractions and mixed numbers, like and unlike denominators of 20 or less, and express answers in the simplest form. The next one is understand the concept of multiplication and division of fractions. And the third one is compute and perform simple multiplication and division of fractions and apply these procedures. Which 3 and 5 kind of sounded the same to me. They were both solving problems.
I might be looking at the wrong place. Were you under number sense?
Yes. 2.0 and it's 3, 4, and 5 is what I was reading.
Grades 3.5?
No, 2.3, 4, and 5.
Oh.
It looks like Common Core does everything except fractions by fractions in fifth grade, and they put fractions by fractions off until sixth grade.
Division.
Yeah, I'm sorry, division, sorry, yes.
It's multiplication and fraction.
So that would be a difference. I didn't look at Massachusetts.
Well,
They just have, yeah, it was very general, had to say multiply by
Problems.
fractions and mixed numbers. And then they have simplified fractions too.
Now our GLEs said 2008 version said, estimate and justify products and quotients of whole numbers and sums and differences of decimals and fractions. Let's see if there's anything else.
But what about, so, go ahead.
Represent and recognize division using various models including quotative and partitive. Estimate and justify products and quotients of whole numbers and sums and differences of decimals and fractions. That's the language from the old Glees.
So in our old Glees, put all multiplying and dividing fractions off till sixth grade, right? Yes.
Yeah, they just have sums and differences in fifth.
So do we wanna just say, compute and perform multiplication and division of fractions? So I'm trying to adapt from California where they have compute and perform simple multiplication and division of fractions and apply these procedures for solving problems. Again, solving problems being embedded in what we're doing. So they put in the word simple there, and we might wanna specify what we mean by simple.
So I'd be interested to hear from the fifth grade people. If we put division of fractions in, that's actually asking more than what the Common Core did, which is fine, but I'd just be curious what the fifth grade teachers.
We do have to be careful how much we throw in, because how much realistically can a teacher get through in a year's time? Especially when I've said before, I don't know about you, but we get bogged down with fractions. It takes a while to get through that.
Multiplying, I think multiplication is fine.
Yeah.
If they finally like that. So that comes by lots of identity prices. Division. I know I'm a sixth grade skill, by the time not that it can't be introduced, but if we're gonna test them out on it, fifth grade is probably not realistic, right?
So multiplication is the big new piece as far as computation. Is that mixed numbers?
I do mix numbers.
Yeah,
So do you guys think we should put division off completely as a tested thing?
well, they're gonna get it when understanding the relationship and understanding the parts of a whole. We're gonna get that.
Division of a whole number by a fraction would be,
I don't know, is that something like you said that we might wanna put off? Just again, whatever we put in there, they're gonna.
a division of fraction by fraction, it's really complicated. There's
Yes.
not a lot of real world examples that we can pull without
And
measurement.
that's one thing we want to hit also with word problems.
Yes, that one's gonna be
But
very
it
difficult.
seems like whole numbers divided by a fraction versus whole numbers times a fraction, they need to have that understanding of what, you know, like which scenario is dividing and which
Divide
scenario
20
is
into
multiplying.
fourths, when you say it
So
like
they
that.
kind of go hand in hand.
So you can do a whole number, they can do divide 20 into fourths.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah.
Okay,
How many
so
fourths do you get out of 20?
Yeah.
So this right here.
we wanna separate multiplication and division.
Yes.
Sorry.
And so what are we gonna say about multiplication?
Multiply fractions including mixed numbers.
Probably. Put in Massachusetts 2000.
Okay. Divide whole numbers by fractions.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
So we did two. So we did multiply fractions including mixed numbers. Divide whole numbers by fractions.
Whole numbers by fractions. Okay, I was looking to see what NCTM did with it. It looks like, let's see. Looks like their focus in the curriculum focal points from NCTM were, developing an understanding of and fluency with addition and subtraction of fractions and decimals at 5th grade.
Just addition and subtraction.
I'm not seeing anything else, but anybody else that wants to look through this, wants to take over this chunk.
That would make sense because the GLEs were based on that and the GLEs put it all the multiplying in 6th grade, so that would make sense.
Yeah. So,
I
but,
mean, it is a ton to teach them when you get into fractions, because, you know, making them like denominators, and then you get people present, okay, now we have to simplify it, there's a lot, there's a lot.
There's a-
That's what I was gonna say, you wanna make sure you don't throw so much into it that it's practically impossible to
Yeah.
keep everything done.
Yeah.
But I worry about 6th grade, because it's a lot, right, I mean, I don't know what they've changed, but currently it has a lot. In both reading and math, I would, at this point, not wanna teach 6th grade.
Well,
Well, one of
fifth grade is
I-
overloaded right now.
I
too.
think at this point, we get in what we think needs to be in there, and we have those conversations where we show this and say, does this seem too much? And we maybe try to think about, okay, how much time would we spend teaching on these different topics, and, you know, when you show.
That's the big thing too, you know, you can hit on everything, but are you really gonna be able to get due attention?
Just scratching the surface.
well, yeah, is it
Yeah.
going to get to mastery or are we just
So,
introducing?
I think that's a decision that we need to be informed on, and by showing it to other people and thinking about it more. But I
Yeah,
think today, we put in what we think needs to be there. And it sounds like dividing whole numbers by fractions is, there seems to be general agreement that students should probably be able to
it's
do that.
doable, but, I mean, it's not that they couldn't do it, it's
Right.
getting to it.
If we're gonna cut somewhere, maybe we could cut there.
Yeah.
Just procedural and they don't develop
Exactly.
that understanding.
Standing, and we don't want just
And
the
that fractions
procedural.
piece is so hard for them anyway.
You're right.
Maybe we need another color highlight and put this all in that color, so we make sure we wanna highlight that dividable numbers in green.
Let's highlight it, well, I don't know, I was thinking red.
Well, let's highlight the
Caution.
fraction, the multiply too, because it sounds like there's some people questioning if that should be,
Okay.
if that should be.
So we're definite on the add and subtract with unlike denominators, including mixed numbers. And we still have solved problems using an appropriate strategy. That one's the highlighted one we copied and pasted from before. Those are the two that,
Are these highlight versions gonna be posted in the Dropbox later? Okay, cause I'm not doing that stuff on mine.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
no, and when I take it to
I'm
my,
not even talking to me, I'm waiting for you guys to send it to me.
We have to have a key for the highlights.
well, no, cause when I take it to my 5th grade team next week, you know, for them to look at, for people who've been teaching 5th grade, purely just 5th grade for all these years, I mean, I would like to get their feedback.
Yeah, cause I was gonna tell you, my partner and I, the 5th grade teacher, we find ourselves after Christmas and we actually have to double up on our math in order to try and get everything in. It shouldn't be that way, but we have to teach, and what we do is we try and pick something that uses a kind of different part of the brain. We usually use geometry, and that's what we teach is the doubling up part right before the test. And which, that means something else has to suffer, which is usually social studies, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Because you tested in science too.
Yes.
yes. So social studies does take a hit with that.
So it was,
Is there any way we can
Good
address
point.
that?
just what?
The fact that the teachers are having to teach so much.
So based on the test.
We have tried to do, it didn't matter with GLEs or whatever, they try to tell you how many minutes you get to test, I mean, to teach a certain area, they say you only need 75 minutes for math. And right now, they're giving me 60 minutes in one time frame to teach math, that's not enough time
I
for
don't
me
know,
to teach
I don't know
math.
if this, I don't know if it's spelled out in state statutes and how many times.
No, this
No,
is,
this is
usually
it's
district.
a district decision, but by the time you put in 75 minutes of math, 90 to 100 minutes of ELA, that's reading, writing, grammar, spelling, you name it, that's gotta all fit in there. And then you got your science and social studies on top of it. I mean, you've covered your whole entire day. And then, you know, that's mandatory that K3 has so many minutes of recess because of physical activity. I mean, that's mandatory by the state. You can't take that away from them. And so, I mean, when you do that,
Adds up quick.
it adds up quick and then
You
you're
have to
backed up on a
understand.
pacing schedule.
The other things that we need to really think about as teaching time lost in the classroom is, since school started, my kids have been Ames web tested, speech
Mhm.
tested,
The testing.
eye checked, so another separate time for a hearing check. We've had grandparents' day, we've had 2 or 3 drills now.
Have you had
And
school?
gender drills.
Yeah,
The pull-ups.
those
I
school
mean,
pictures always took forever.
Pictures, we have been
Headlights
hit with
checks.
one
Yeah.
thing after
Oh,
the
yeah.
other every week. And that's my teaching time, and I
Yeah.
am very
That's not built
possessive
into
of
the
my
schedule, is
teaching
it?
time, yes. And I find it more and more taken from me all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where we're getting the back where teachers have to double up on stuff right before those tests hit, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if we really listen to the teachers, if you're sitting there saying, you know, oh, they're having such a hard time with this, they're having such a hard time with that, oh, fifth grade's having such struggles with that. Well, why are we trying to teach that to fifth graders if they're having such a hard time year after year?
But
Why are we listening to what the teachers are saying?
some of these things are concerns that we should consider.
Yes.
But at the same time, we can't control what district decisions are. And so we do need to set forth what we think the expectations should be. And yes, that's informed by these conversations, but we've gotta have something that we think students should learn. And the districts are gonna, smart districts are gonna hopefully avoid as many distractions as they can, and others may not use their time as wisely.
That was pretty
But that's
diplomatic.
all stuff that we have to do.
But I mean, it's like you budget in here at home.
Yeah.
I'm gonna budget to spend everything I make, well, that doesn't account for any unforeseen emergency, something comes up, my car breaks down. Well, same way, you budget the number of minutes in a day, you've got that already blocked out for, quote, education.
Yeah, as long as I keep it there. Yeah.
If you have it, but
Yeah.
it happens. And so it gets pulled out, and we don't figure that into the whole process of, we
They
really
have to
only
get
get
it first time, not allowed to, right?
5 hours of education time, or whatever, that's probably too much, but in
Okay,
reality, overall, you're not getting it, but I mean, that, we can't solve that problem, but
well, let's think about what else needs to be here. We had put estimation. Do we also need to put simplifying fractions or reducing or anything like that?
All included, I think.
Wasn't it worded somewhere, where does
I think it's at
There's one
fifth
on
grade
that
to
board,
reduce fractions.
Massachusetts.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Massachusetts.
before fifth grade.
Have
They
you guys
do
looked-
simplify fractions.
Have you looked back at the old Massachusetts report, Common Core? On
I
that
think
map?
That's the one.
That's it, that's 2000 right here.
Is
That's
that
the
the
one
one
we
you're
got.
looking at, 2000?
Okay.
She's got one pulled up on her
Paper copy
computer.
because it's,
I didn't get the paper
it's
copy out.
blended third,
Yeah.
grade, and fifth, and I couldn't pick out what was third and what was fifth, so I just went specifically. But the one that says select and use appropriate operations to solve problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and positive integers. It goes, I mean, it's a lot, it gets to put in the exponents with whole numbers and positive fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, and percents. There's all of it in together, that's all one.
Yeah, that's that circle. What does that circle symbol stand for again?
So I wanna ask,
Well, that would be a word problem.
Yeah.
I wanna ask Janet and Leslie, so without looking at anybody else's standards, what do kids need to know about fractions at your grade level? What's your belief system?
Add, subtract with like and unlike denominators and simplification to be able to do that also in a word problem situation.
Okay.
Pretty basic.
Yeah,
Add,
be, yeah,
subtract
simplify,
with
reduce,
both.
and realize that, yeah. And using mixed
And
numbers
solve
and how to
problems.
take a mixed number and make it an improper fraction, so we can do that.
Okay.
That's a huge chunk, because I gotta tell you, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but some of my kids are still coming to me and they don't know their multiplication facts. So you
Yeah.
try teaching fractions when they don't know their
Sure.
multiplication facts, oh my.
Yeah. Okay. So we've pretty much covered that
Yeah.
in what we,
Mhm.
so are we done? Are we doing anything with estimation? Right now it's still in parentheses because it's a note that somebody said we need to stick that under there.
Well, it'd certainly be nice if they could look at 2.5 plus 1 3/4 and be able to give what it should be close to. That would be,
Well, and it's also I think that also is when you're thinking about multiplying by fractions, you know that if you multiply by a fraction, your answer should be smaller than what you started with.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
those just sort of general.
But that's not
Kids don't
intuitive to kids.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not intuitive because you think multiply, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the brain always goes.
It's kind of like
And
netting.
but this also goes to understanding that a fraction is the same as a decimal, and if you multiply by a decimal, knowing that it gets smaller because it's less than 1, and so there's this. It's like how much of this do we spell out, and how much do we assume that this is information you need to know to do the things that we're talking about.
If we don't put something about estimation, it's likely to get overlooked, I think.
Okay.
Do you all agree?
Is this the only place it's gonna be?
No.
No, it's in the
Estimating with,
operations.
well, estimating with fractions
fractions.
would be the, I mean, it's, because we're performing and solving problems with fractions, it seems like estimating with fractions would fit under that.
That helps them with.
Especially
mental
if
math
we think
more.
about basic benchmark
Being able to guess
fractions.
whether or not.
When you're
close
thinking
to
of your
what-
basic benchmark I can't even say it, fractions.
Oh,
Watch what comes out. Half, your half, your fourth, your 3/4, thirds. But they can do it with that, estimating with your benchmark fractions. Because, you're not throwing in all those, 5/16ths, you're not doing it with that. You're making estimates with your benchmark fraction. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Relationship between numerators and denominators. So if we're putting 5/16, they would that would be.
Yeah.
Eight.
Yeah, I want to go over the other ones. I wouldn't lie, look at you go. I did.
My son in 6th grade looks at me and goes, huh?
Can we just say something about estimating?
What?
Estimate results of computation.
Using benchmark fractions.
Mhm.
That's what we focus on.
Estimate results using benchmark fractions. Example, half, third, fourth.
Estimate results of computations with whole numbers and with positive fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, but you don't want all that other stuff.
We just want the fraction part, am I correct?
So say,
Wouldn't we want them though to know that if they have 9/10, that's not a benchmark fraction, but you're saying that they would round, know that that would be close to 1, and think
Yeah.
of it as 1. I'm afraid if we say benchmark fractions, there would be the inclination to not give them problems that didn't have benchmark fractions.
Right, we wanna use the relationship of the numerator and denominator to
That's
decide
true.
how big or how small.
That's true.
How to say it. What did you have again, Caroline? Can we start from that and then tweak?
I will.
Well, that's from the Massachusetts one. I got it right here. I just have been thinking about that one too, but.
Say it again for us.
Tell me though, on this estimation, where else is it, I'm sorry, where is it, it should just be under operations, shouldn't it? No, just under operations.
No, we didn't put,
Well,
we
we put just a thing, just for estimation, so we're putting estimation in several places, am I understanding that correctly?
we did not put it under when we were talking about decimals.
But we could,
We could.
or we could go back and put it there.
Estimation. That's what's here, it's,
Massachusetts, basically, it's estimate positive fractions and positive decimals.
estimate results of computations with whole numbers and with positive fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, and percents.
But the only thing here, we don't want them computing with percents,
We want to take off that.
not computing percents of other things.
Say it one more time for us slow typers.
We want percent conversion, but when you say
Okay.
computing with percent, so it'd be like taking 60% of 750.
Estimate results of computations with whole numbers and with positive fractions, mixed numbers, decimals.
Where are you
Not
putting it,
percent.
Jason?
Well, right now, I just have it under,
Fractions?
yeah, I mean, I still have it under number and operations dash fractions. I have it under that perform operations and solve problems with fractions.
That's where I put it too.
So that's
Estimates.
Yes,
E, is it E on yours?
well,
I have 3 highlighted ones in there.
so I just have the add and
I'm
subtract,
gonna put the
multiply,
if part on there.
divide,
That's
and
what
I'm
we were
putting it
just
next
asking.
under estimate.
So I still have that solve
I'm
problems
sticking
one.
it towards the
With
end.
what?
That's fine.
What else did you
Well,
say?
Describe
that would
That's
be
it.
like
That
your
makes
example
five.
9/10.
Okay, but I
So
don't
notice
have this one written
that's
out. What
9/10
you
is
get
closer
written
to
out for this one?
10/10
Oh,
is one.
estimate
So does it make
results of
sense, that
computation
describe reasonableness,
with whole
it just
numbers
makes,
and positive
having them say,
fractions
does this
and
make
numbers.
sense? They have to be able to tell us, yes, and why.
Is that a
Yes.
testable item?
I'm not sure that's right, or that's where it was
Explaining.
talking, but that's what I
Yeah,
think
cause
right
that
now.
would even get into measurement.
Yeah.
That's closer
And they
to
have to be able to
answer.
explain themselves, yeah.
Maybe you should have that in there.
What did you guys type?
Uh,
And where did you put
estimate
it?
results of computations, and we may wanna take out the whole numbers, but with whole numbers and positive fractions and mixed numbers. That's what it says right this instant. It's,
Oh, and you didn't put in decimals?
Not here.
I didn't hear it yet, so no, cause this section's just with fractions.
The other thing is if we're only dividing, do we want them to try and estimate with division? I guess it wouldn't matter, 'cause right now we have whole numbers divided by
So if we
fraction.
take 10, here, trying to figure out how many.
You could put fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals, if you want. I don't know. I just took what they were reading from
I
Massachusetts
find
and
that I
tweaked
like
it.
the mixed numbers and decimals because a lot of times we separate the decimals from the fractions and we're really wanting them to, from a previous
Yes.
standard, to see that they're together. So
Okay.
I can have decimal questions or I can have fraction questions and they're all under this idea of rational number.
Okay,
So estimate results of,
computations.
with whole numbers, positive fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals.
So having it there, but
Yeah, and we
Yeah, I
can
think-
take it out with positive fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals.
Yes, okay. I think we could just say fractions, we haven't mentioned, we haven't put positive fractions anywhere else that's right.
Fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals.
There we go.
I think this keep going.
Now, my
I know,
question,
keep knocking it down, we're
Ask
gonna
that
get
question, is that gonna open it up for that negative
I don't think so.
fractions as far as the testing standpoint, test writing standpoint?
Well, could we, if it does, then we need to go back on all of these and put positive, which is fine.
What if our domain is number and operation positive
Positive
fractions? Then everything under it would be positive.
All those functions.
What do you think about that?
That's a good place to put it, that way that's
Okay, so
titles,
here's-
there it
here's
is.
It's an NOPF.
Here's another question.
Yes. Because we gotta think about our acronyms too, we don't want it to be a poor acronym.
here's a question then. It's basically a procedural cosmetic question. Our standard is perform operations and solve problems with fractions.
Positive fractions.
No.
We just changed, we just changed.
Oh, I put that
No,
over
we
the
changed
top.
it all the way up at the top.
domain.
Number of
Number
operations dash
Oh, there.
positive fractions.
Gotcha.
So that, then it covers everything. Okay. So it says perform operations and solve problems with fractions. But then this particular item deals with fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. Is that an issue? Do we need to change anything, or can we just leave it the way it is? Do you see
In
what I'm
my
saying?
mind, decimals and mixed numbers are also fractions.
Okay,
So I
that's
see
fine
them
with
all
me.
together,
Yes,
but
I do
that
too.
could be my interpretation of that.
I think they should.
I'm just clarifying.
What do you think, Anne?
I agree with her.
You got it in other places, fractions, decimals, percents, don't you?
Well, the other thing that we could do is put that same standard back up with the decimals to reinforce it. Is that what the question is? Should it be back up
I'm
on
just
the
making
decimals?
sure we're happy with where it is.
Just gonna keep kicking it.
And I don't have a problem with it there. I'm just,
Well, I think it could be in
That's
both
how my
places,
brain
and that way
works.
you've taken care of it in the one spot with all numbers and the decimals. Then you do it with the fractions, you're estimating with all of it, is what you're doing.
The reason to put it, if you put it the way it is, then a problem would be fair that would have both mixed numbers and decimals in it. And they would have to estimate with a problem that have both. Is that what we want?
So it could say like 4 3/4 times 2 and 1/10 as a decimal.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking this is 2 and this is 4 and it's about 8.
Okay, fifth grade teachers.
Oh, yeah, I think fifth grade teachers need to decide.
Next thing, problem.
Well, that would be like the capstone, because you have those skills
Yes.
ahead, so now they
They do
should
it.
be able
They
to see
should.
any number and be able to tell you about how much it is.
Yeah.
They should be able to.
Yeah.
And they normally can in isolation, it's just when you put it together, they're like, ah. But the more exposure they get to it. the
Another
better
color of
they
highlighting.
I did put a key on here.
And we're still talking the same kind of numbers they're operating with.
Yes.
And so if they're gonna operate with them, they should be able to estimate with them. And really, when you're teaching it, you're teaching them the estimating before they actually start to operate, so maybe check the reasonableness of the answer.
And the way our master uses it, what you do, you start out by introducing estimation first, and then you go into
Because that's best practice,
because
that's
you want to make sure your answer you come up with is reasonable.
Yes.
You use the estimation.
A lot of research has been proven to show that you wanna
Estimation
get a
comes
sense
first.
of it
Yes.
before you start to operate with it.
Also, then we can move it. We should move estimation to the top,
Support that kind of thing.
Maybe under ads.
should it be after add and subtract, or should it be before?
Honestly, if you want my opinion, just from reading everything I've done, I don't think it matters where you put it, because they still have the freedom of saying, well, I wanna teach this first,
Sure.
or I wanna
Yeah.
teach this second.
Yeah, we're not
So I mean,
saying
just because we put it in a certain location doesn't mean that it's set
That's
in
right.
stone for them to do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
So I'm, not that it matters, but I'm putting it first.
Under 2.
Yeah, 2, it's 2.1 or 2.8, whatever you call it. So now I have the estimate results of computations with fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. Was there anything changed on that? There we go.
Just a second.
Read it one more time.
Estimate results of computations with fractions and mixed numbers and decimals. Then we have our add and subtract one, we have our multiply, we have our divide.
Both of those are green on mine. Did you make them red?
I
I
think
already had used green.
I would feel better if you'd make the one we just put in green too, so that the 5th grade folks can think about it and ask their teacher
Okay.
friends.
What do you mean,
Well, I
assigning
mean,
one?
Maybe-
The mixture of the 3 of the different forms together.
Maybe
You
we
guys think
highlight
about
all
it.
of this and say,
Let's-
you know,
let's
maybe we
sleep
highlight
on
all of operations with fractions, saying, you know, these are what we thought, what do you think in this section?
Yeah, because my fear is we're gonna get all through this, and be so proud of what we've done, we go over there, I'm like, oh, no, they really have to do this.
Okay.
Their expectations will do that.
That sounded like everything 5th grade wanted for fractions.
Moving target.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say it again, Lynn.
I said it sounded like everything 5th grade said they wanted in their fractions unit, or in this unit. So,
It seems like as I look back to the Common Core and the stuff that they're saying, it seems like a lot of times they're just using multiple more points to say, do it in context.
yeah.
Yeah, because they have a lot to say in that section there. What goes on and on.
Well, and then they also connect it with the area models, because in 3rd grade, when they're calculating area, it's with whole numbers. And now that you know how to do fractions, you can have fractional dimensions. So you could have like 3/10, you know, when you're measuring it.
Right. Yeah, what's the
But if
area?
it's still
of-
just putting the fraction numbers in context of whatever the situation is that you're given.
Right.
Fraction. Okay.
Fraction or decimal.
Good. All right, so we are now finished
Are we
with
done with fractions?
number and operations dash positive fractions.
Alright, so we're going into data and statistics.
Let's give everybody a chance to think about that last statement. I see wheels spinning, so.
Well,
We just wanna make sure we
I-
have everything that would be,
okay, do a quick plan, all your resources.
Well, it's not
But you did change it.
done.
Positive fractions
And-
in the heading.
Yeah,
Okay, let's see.
do we anywhere, so California has this, where they wanna put fractions, percents, and decimals on a number line. Do we need to do anything like that?
Say that again.
So they have identify and represent on a number line decimals, fractions, mixed numbers, and positive and negative integers. They're saying just on a number line being able to place it. Do we need to have something specifically talking about that?
We really don't have anything that deals with comparison.
We do up in decimals, but not with the,
Yeah, but not down in fractions.
But we say given a value of less than 1, be able to express its equivalency as a fraction. So that's the equivalency piece, but it's not sort of recognizing the relative magnitude of a fraction versus a
Because
decimal.
when we ask them, is 9 closer to the 10 than 1, they need that number line too. I mean, some people need the visual, but they would need to know where it would fall. Because a lot of times when you ask if it's a mixed number and it's 1 and 2/3, and then you have 3/4, where are those on the number line? And if they get confused, sometimes they don't even see that 1 as a number and they don't know where to put those. They see 3, they're just 1 and 2/3 and 3/4. They see 3/4 as bigger than 2/3, and they're gonna switch them around and place them wrong. And so, yeah, I think a number line is honestly something that needs to be.
And I agree, I do think the number line is critical, but I think it needs to come earlier when they're introduced to the fraction, because that's where you put them on the.
Well, I was
thinking
Especially in
put it-
third or fourth grade
Yeah.
versus
so.
fifth
Maybe it's a
grade.
4th grade thing, yeah.
unless you're going to throw in the fraction or the percents in the decimal representation.
It could be an easily reviewed item in 5th grade that you bring back the number line and say, hey, do you remember where they all fell? So when we talk about, because I always say, when you get 6, you get 6 out of 10, where are you at? Are you closer to 10, are you closer to 1? So, but I don't have a number line for them to look at. I have to mentally think about it. So, since we
What
know.
about understand the relative magnitude, is that the right phrase, of fractions and decimals? Or,
How about
You're looking for
compare
order.
and locate on a number? Compare and
Order them.
locate
Can
on
you
a
order
number.
numbers
Or
line?
Order the
Compare and
order fractions and decimals, including mixed numbers and improper fractions, and locate on a number line.
Say that again.
You don't even have to say number line. You can just say
Yeah, I mean,
compare.
order fractions and
Compare
decimals,
and order
including mixed
fractions.
numbers and improper fractions. I just said
Are we-
locate on a.
Are we putting that up?
I think it goes
I put it
under
under
number
one.
I
one.
don't know
Yeah,
where
under
it goes,
one.
but
Third bullet?
Yeah.
I
Okay,
just threw out words.
slower.
Compare and order fractions.
He didn't, okay, he just started with order.
No, he
I
said
said
compare,
I said
order,
order,
order.
You just said order and
and I don't know where, I just said
Okay,
order.
let's,
I don't
let's
think-
take what you got and then tweak it.
You're gonna have to
Don't get
compare
too
them
many.
before you can order.
So we'll say compare and order,
That's very true.
Fractions,
That's part of it.
improper fractions,
I don't,
and decimals.
He said fractions and decimals
mixed
including.
numbers.
Mixed numbers and improper
oh, okay,
fractions.
so say, I'm sorry, can you say it one more time for me?
Order, please, compare and order fractions and decimals, including mixed numbers and improper fractions. And I just said, and locate on a number line, but if that's not necessary, I don't care about that.
The number
We
line
were
is just,
talking about number line, I just
the
thought.
number line is a tool you would use.
Right.
And improper.
Okay.
And here's the thing, I don't think that we should specify improper fractions, given that they're fractions, and we know where else have we talked about
Oh, you mean separate
keeping
that
it
out?
as a separate. We did mixed numbers, and we were talking maybe about percents. That was what I was thinking, if we're gonna order percents, that makes sense to make a special expectation, because percents we just added in new. But I don't know if we need to specify improper
So,
numbers.
and I'm fine with not having percent there too. Compare and order fractions and decimals, including mixed numbers
And percents.
and percents.
Compare and order fractions, decimals,
And percents.
And percent.
and percents.
And I don't think we need the mixed number improper fraction, because those are
That's
just
part of
different
it.
forms of fractions, decimals, and percents.
So do we want to be careful again here with what kind of numbers we give them? Because what if they had something like 5/11ths?
It's limited to denominators that are factors of 100 if you look at the standard.
Okay.
So could they give them a problem like, could these on a number line where 35%, 1/2, would they do that? Would they mix up the decimals with the fractions, expect them to put them on a number line?
That could get hard for
And then
fifth
they'd have to
grade.
convert.
But they'd all be denominators with 100, but that
So if
would
the number
still
line
be-
was 1 out
Be a
of 100.
possibility, wouldn't it?
mean, one
I'm
example I saw
worried
was
we're-
take a, if you got a 0.23 inch wide hole, can I put a 1/4 inch
Yeah,
bolt through it?
you know, but
And you gotta know it's 0.25 and that's bigger than 0.23, it's not gonna go. But is that the kind of mix
I'm
between
worried,
decimals and fractions? Is that,
we're
is
just
that?
introducing them to decimals in 5th grade, and then I'm worried that that's gonna be awfully hard for 5th grade.
It seems more appropriate for 6th grade.
You guys know, I don't know.
But I could
Not that
see,
you couldn't teach it in 5th grade, but to think of that expectation would be a
Every
more
child
appropriate
has to do
placement
it.
Oh, I
in
understand.
6th
Oh, absolutely,
grade.
yeah,
You could teach it an answer.
Could it be an or instead of and? Could it be or, so they would compare and order fractions or decimals or percents, and they wouldn't be doing everything at once?
together.
We've already got the decimals in there, we've already got them
I
compared.
could see it with basic number. I could see them doing it with, you know, if I gave them a half, fourth, you know, the sort of standard
Mhm.
fractions that aren't, you know, where we're not getting too complicated. I could see them doing it with those, because you know, especially as you think about, you know, money, like we talked about being 0.25 and 0.5. But I think if you get beyond that, you are starting to get to where it's getting a little more complex.
And they likely will have already done that kind of comparison early on. So if we put it here, the fractions are likely would need to be more, I would assume they'd be comparing fractions back in 3rd and 4th grade probably.
If they're learning about what their
Benchmark type
value is,
fractions.
so they'd be estimating it and then comparing. Because 2nd grade right now is where they're doing money operations, so again, you would be building on what they're bringing.
Well, this is where, when you think about this, okay, when I first started back in 3rd grade, 4 years ago, and that was before fractions were dropped back down into 3rd grade. And then when, all of a sudden, when we took on the new learning standards, they dropped down some things into 3rd grade. Fractions became a huge issue for 3rd graders. So as we look at this right now as 5th grade and what we think might be, I mean, Jan and I were just talking, I don't even know if percents even has to be there in 5th grade. Honestly, pull it out completely. I think I'm gonna bring this to my 5th grade team and they're gonna say, does it even need to be there? And maybe that's a topic we need to talk about, because right now there's some things going on in 3rd grade with fractions that they are not developmentally ready for some of the fractions that I've taught for 2 years in a row in 3rd grade, that they're not ready for some of those fraction things. But we're not there yet in 3rd grade. I just know that as we work down through fractions, I know what I did for 2 years in a row with fractions was pretty scary for my 3rd graders, and I had to it was a lot of stuff I had to do and prepare for a state test in 3rd grade, but I didn't have to do it the first 2 years I taught 3rd grade, but then I had to build up to that and throw it at them. They're not comparing a lot of this in 3rd grade. They're just getting into fractions as what is a fourth? What does a fourth look like? That's 4 quarters in a dollar. That's it. That's all you're doing in 3rd grade.
So what if we just say
So-
compare
The
and
extra
order
stuff
simple?
could be part of that enrichment
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
Two numbers.
Yeah.
not a
Or
group.
you know what's coming up later on, and if you got, you know, 2 or 3 students that are, you think are ready for it, you can always throw
Yeah,
it in.
so I mean, there's gonna be things that might come out of 3rd grade and go into 4th, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So as we work down, we need to think about that, where 3rd grade is right now. We might have to really adjust some of this. And honestly, as I keep thinking about the percents, I'm just thinking about where my students, and maybe I shouldn't, because I had these kids in 3rd grade 2 years ago, so I know them pretty well. They're a low math group, it really is, and so maybe I shouldn't, I just need to be unbiased. But, because my kids last year were brilliant in math. But percents is, well, as we get to
Well,
talking about it, is pretty hard.
I like
You know, with
percents the
all the stuff
first
we're
two.
doing with fractions, I love the fractions into the decimals and the mixed numbers and with the equivalency and doing everything here, but ooh, the percents,
So
Hold
I
on,
like
I'm
percents in the
saying
first two, because I think that it's, because the first one we say understanding that it can be expressed in these different ways. And then the second one we
I
say.
think they can understand that, I'm not.
Right, and I think you're right on comparing. I think it doesn't need to be percent here. I would do just compare and order fractions and decimals
Yes.
and not include percents.
I
Because
think
when you do percent, you're like 125%, then they're thinking, or whatever, you know.
We already have comparing decimals, so do we need another standard here?
What do we need to compare and order fractions?
Well, they're gonna.
Okay, where was it
you know,
before?
5,
Where
6
was
grade and
the
7/8.
where was the decimals?
I thought we had, maybe we don't have, oh yeah, we do, read, write, and compare decimals to the thousands place.
In word, standard in, standard.
I do think we need compare and order fractions.
It's under number one and place value. Or number sense.
Number of operations,
Yeah.
dash fractions.
What about, or would we wanna read, write, and compare fractions? And then put some sort of limitation on it too, like we did on the decimals?
Well, if we leave it where it is, there is already a limitation.
Yeah, it's limited to
Okay.
denominators that are factors of 100.
Right. When,
So the real question then is, do we need the comparison of fractions and decimals together? Because we're sounds like we're saying we do wanna have ordering of fractions. So the question is, do we want them to all do fractions and decimals together?
My vote is no.
and I think if we had decimals up earlier, it fits up there. Let's not put it here. It's under the number of operations.
Base 10.
Because that's where
okay,
we were dealing with.
I'm fine with just saying compare and order
Powers 10
fractions.
Decimals to the thousandths place. So it's one is the fourth bullet.
So the idea on the table is just to do compare and order fractions.
Because we already have decimals taken care of.
Decimals
Yeah.
another place. And so what we're saying here though is
Are we
that,
saying compare and order or read, write, and compare fractions? Do they need to know how to read them, to
Right.
write them?
But won't they, when they already have that though?
No, it's only.
well,
decimals.
it's keeping it consistent with our phrasing on
But
decimals.
if you do that, then you're opening up, that is
That was from
while it
yesterday.
should be an easy item, we're just making the test possibly even more wide.
Yeah.
And
So-
they should have already read and wrote.
That too.
Wait a minute.
Okay, that's fine, no, I was just.
So we're
I
comparing
couldn't keep track of
in
all.
fractions, comparing decimals, but we're not comparing fractions and decimals. Is that what we said?
That's what I,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
all it is.
I mean, comparing fraction to fraction, decimal to decimal, but we're not comparing fractions to decimals.
That's what we're saying.
That's what we're saying.
We can move in this section.
And we haven't necessarily reached a consensus that that's the right thing, but we're saying, that
Yeah,
is what we're
that's-
saying.
make sure.
Okay, so where are we? We took out, we just have compare and order fractions?
That's what I have.
Yes, compare.
Everybody's looking right at.
And we have
I
another one
had
that
it
says
read, write,
compare.
and compare fractions, but
That's
we'll change to
towards
compare
something.
fractions.
What?
Well, maybe, so I'm gonna note a
I'll
question.
put whatever you tell me.
I'm just gonna put in parentheses, should we include decimals? And ask the question, put it there, and then
We have
that's,
To
decimals.
compare
Had
decimals, you
decimals
mean?
up earlier.
no, comparing fractions and decimals, as he was just saying.
Oh,
That's the thing is I don't know, I'm trying to keep it more concrete, and I know it's gotta go a little bit above concrete, but when you're talking about a 10-year-old, sometimes it,
I was just showing her the Piaget, developmental stages, and a lot of our kids in 5th grade, the reason they have trouble with that number of values less than 1 is because depending, and I hate to say it, we're all born different, okay, mentally, so some of them still come to us at that age, 7 to 11 to 12 years old is still that concrete operational phase. And some of them are still gonna be there even when they move on to junior high because of what we're all born with. So there is a limit we can push them. I'm kinda like you, do we keep percents? Or some of them are not going to be, if you give them decimals and percents and fractions, and this could be a possibility on the test, and they're all mixed up and they say, okay, now compare these. Well, they're gonna have to know this abstract idea of what we're wanting them to do is they're gonna have to choose one system over another to make sense of it. Do I convert them all to decimals? Do I convert them all to fractions? And I'm afraid that all 5th graders are not gonna be there to be able to do that.
So,
I'm brain dead too, but why did we originally add percents here?
I think
It
it
might
was
have
in
been
one
mine.
of the with Massachusetts or California.
Oh, okay.
but I think it might be my suggestion as well. I especially in points A and B, I like having percents there. Because I do think it's easy to understand that you can display a whole number as a fraction of percent or decimal. But I understand the point about comparing and ordering them. That might be more difficult. So what I would suggest right now is we leave with the three we have, where we have the understanding one with the given a value, be able to express the equivalency, and then we have the third one, which is compare and order fractions. And then this again is something that let's just note that basically the entire fractions section is one part that we need to have those serious discussions with other people about. When we come back next time, be prepared to have more discussion on that and whether or not we remove something or change it a little bit. Because being cognizant of our time, we're down to less than 2 hours and we still, I think, have 2 sections, is that right?
And one of them's pretty big.
So I would suggest we leave with what we have right now.
Okay.
And
Let's
then,
knock out data and statistics, 'cause that's pretty short.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting to what do they do on this Friday? License to. We're not really necessarily sitting there telling them.
Even Massachusetts is,
Yeah.
we only got, Massachusetts is very short, display, analyze, and interpret data.
Well, and that's what our
I know that's,
Yeah.
well, that's
Standard.
that's what we said, and then,
That's probably where it came from, I just couldn't remember. Where are we going now? Data and statistics or geometry and measurement?
let's knock out data and statistics, cause it's pretty short.
Okay. And the only thing I have under there right now is display, analyze, and interpret data. Correct?
That's under data or is that separate?
well, it's under it.
It was separate in my feeble-minded way this morning.
I'm just gonna throw something out there and see what you guys say about this. What if we don't have any data at 5th grade? There's not much in the Common Core for data at 5th grade since we pulled the measurement out, and they have an awful lot to do with decimals and fractions.
When should they learn how to do the mean, the average? Is that 5th grade? And is that data analysis when they, mean,
It is.
medium, and
Yeah,
all
mean,
that?
median, mode.
Is that all, is that 5th grade? Okay, that's earlier, okay, I didn't know, cause that's data analyzing data
I remember I taught those skills in,
earlier.
well, it's still in 5th grade.
5th grade.
I remember
Tested
doing-
in 6th grade, it could be
And
better.
how-
They have to know that, because I know that our 6th grade teacher teaches 6th and 8th actually. She's in the 6th grade, she has to take them from what we're doing with them, to doing some, stuff that she said she didn't see till she got to college in a statistics course, which was a box and whiskers plot. I didn't know what that was, so I asked my daughter. She said, well, I'll come show you. Well, I just taught myself. I went to Khan Academy. I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. I know what it is now. But she said it was hard to get them there from what we were teaching them to that, and I can see that.
Yeah, I think there's some stuff that needs to be here. I think it maybe not too much. But I think that, and maybe, I don't know if mean, median, mode is also earlier somewhere other place, but,
I think mode and median are earlier, perhaps not mean because they have to be able to divide, and they have, if they can't divide, they can't find the mean.
But let me make sure, do we have two, we have data and statistics?
data and statistics
And
under it.
display, analyze, and interpret data, is that another one?
Data and
Yeah, that's
statistics.
under it.
That's the.
That's under
big-
it, okay,
that's
well,
it.
it's showed it big, I
It's
just wanna make sure.
I'm
standard.
sorry, it was just me.
No, I just wanted to make sure that that
Yeah.
was,
So we're trying to
That's
come up with the
underneath there.
expectation. We have the domain, the
All right.
standard is to display, analyze, and interpret, and now we're coming up with
about that, that's, making sure it's on the right start, okay.
Describe and compare data sets using the concepts of median, mean, mode, maximum,
Okay.
and interpretation.
That's why I didn't know if that's 5th grade.
We're doing some of this as 3rd grade. Interpret
Mine's a,
Make it look
the.
pretty.
Understand.
And like,
They do photographs. Big barns in
Line black grass.
And like for this, that would feel like a whole large teacher, sixth grade.
Yeah, probability, I don't know if that needs to be here.
Describe and compare data such
Simple
as
experience,
concepts,
tossing
median,
a
mode,
coin,
power,
rolling
and
a die.
range. They have to know that,
Yeah, I want some of these.
or whatever the actual name is.
Alright,
That's what we were
so,
calling it.
so how about, know the concepts of mean, median, mode. This is California. It says, know the concepts of mean, median, and mode. Compute and compare simple examples to show that they may differ.
I don't really like that.
You know, but I think we need something in about these things.
Well, this is why I said describe and compare data sets using the concepts.
Okay, so if we put them in fifth grade, then we're not gonna put them lower then, because we don't need to put it in multiple grades, so we're gonna say,
So they're not gonna learn it until, it's not gonna be exposed to them until they get fifth grade.
I think there's data for little grades, it's, developmentally appropriate.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is data, because we do bar graphing. I mean, they're recording, they're making tally marks and stem and leaf plots and
they're
all
gonna
that.
they can talk about mode when they're doing bar graphs.
Yeah,
So, I don't know, just, again, the more that we put down.
You're talking about moving it down lower than
Some
fifth
of it,
grade,
yes.
okay.
Not mean, because mean
No,
is
not
the
mean.
division,
Division,
and this
right.
is the year that we're doing division.
But if we put it all back in here, then we're just making teachers reteach it,
Well,
and
At a different level, though, I mean, you're building from the kindergarten,
Yeah.
basic,
It's not- don't duplicate
but if they're analyzing the data using all of that, they already know how to do it. It wouldn't be reteaching them doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
What
you
is
could
it we
use,
put from here?
earlier, I mean, in an earlier grade, you could use, analyze data, use, and what was the stuff you said? Interpret different data sets? I don't know.
Yeah, it was, well, describe and compare the data sets, meaning they're gonna have to compute it using mean, median, and mode to be able to compare the data sets.
So in an earlier grade, we can basically say the same thing, but using mode and median. And then here, we mean, median, and mode. So they need to know those here. Or we can even,
You go back to 34, we have to use those words in earlier grades, just, because they really do hit for physical, I think. It is down, like she says, then they would have that skill still going through. Cause they can know how to do that first. It's not here. But like you said, they do the bar graphs.
I'm fine with putting it at fifth grade, and I just think we should not mention it earlier, it just doesn't make sense. We're trying to focus the standards somewhat, focus this so we're not teaching so much, and if we keep putting things in multiple grade levels, that's what we're gonna cause to happen, we're gonna be back to having so much to do.
I mean theoretically, what's not included in fifth grade, if it's included in fourth, you assume they know that when they get to fifth. So
Right.
duplicating, I mean, if, I'm gonna take the extreme here, you could write fifth grade standards to know everything in K through 4.
Yeah.
That they should know, I mean, that's not what we're trying to do here, but that's the assumption that's made, is that they know all the stuff up through that. So don't duplicate
Right.
the same thing in each one, and either use it in a different way, analyze it in a different way. I mean, you can do the same thing, but it's gotta be used differently, and it's a new technique or a new,
You still have to go
Direct.
back and touch on that, what they
it's
learned
still
last
what they
year,
learned
bring it,
before,
recall.
exactly. Oh, I know,
Don't
yeah,
do that.
absolutely, no, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, but I
Right.
understand what you're saying.
But it's not gonna show up in the
Yeah.
test question,
Yeah.
As that,
yes,
they may have to use it
right.
in the test question, but they've already absorbed it.
I mean, it does now, it shows up in test questions.
Because it's all about measuring.
They're coded back to kindergarten.
Tested over stuff they learned back in third grade.
Yeah.
They haven't seen since third grade, well, that's really good.
And you should be teaching them on their level.
Everything's fair game up to that
Well,
point.
it's really not fair to me, because we're learning if you don't teach the science concepts.
Oh, it's not- that's not fair. I mean, that's what the
How many
thought
of us
is.
go back to
I mean, I
college
know,
and
it's-
go to
but
those
it's
classes
third.
and do well on those tests?
So this constructed interest.
Yeah. I can take my engineering license
Yeah.
test, no thank you.
We also do, well, they do that to start with in science and math in third grade.
have.
So I think there are a couple points in Common Core where they say something like, using prior knowledge of such and such.
Yeah.
And the question is, do we,
Well, the difference is too, we have the three verbs, display, analyze, and interpret, so we're not gonna wanna even use describe and compare at this point. If we're gonna stick with analyze and interpret, we've got to be analyzing and interpreting, not comparing.
Well, we have display, so you could create,
I think creating graphs,
Is displaying, well, cause that's how you're gonna
analyze it,
display
and
your
interpret.
data, right?
I think if we're gonna put graphs, then we need to, this is, sorry, I'm probably totally wrong here, but we need to think about what graphs we're going to introduce when. We don't need to, I don't think, every year have them demonstrate mastery on graphs that we've already asked them to do earlier, so.
They've done a bar graph before,
We know
then
what
they
bar
use
graphs.
the bar graph, they don't just like create a new bar graph, they know that, so.
Are they creating, I assume prior to this, they're creating data tables,
Tally,
spreadsheets, whatever you wanna
tally
call them,
tables.
way prior to fifth grade.
Then we provide,
Yeah.
what's a
Yeah.
circle graph, is it just pie chart or is there something different than circle?
pie chart.
And that,
Well, circle graph is
I think
for
they put
because
that
that's
in middle
proportional.
school.
What'd you say?
I said, I think we ate dinner,
It's more sixth grade.
some of us
Yeah.
are in things together and we met last night and had supper. And they just happened to comment that they had added in circle graphs because it wasn't in the Common Core. And everybody was really happy that they put it in middle school, so.
But it's got the proportional relationships, that percentage, it's really operating with percentages, so middle school is an appropriate place.
So in an
for circle.
earlier grade, we might be asking students to take this information, put it in a bar graph. Take this, put it in a whatever type of graph.
And then,
Here, it could be, they themselves need to know when to use the appropriate graph. So instead of, take this, put it into a bar graph, you have some information, which type of graph is best to use to interpret the, to demonstrate this information.
that's in sixth grade right now.
That's a pretty hard thing for kids, James, to know what graph to use when. I mean, my college students
Get
struggle
wrong
with
in
that.
that.
Well, I think
Because
on-
line graphs, I don't think they've
Over
created line graphs really, I don't know, I didn't do it in third grade, bar graphs were huge, semi-link plots were big, they do the tables, and I don't know what they're making in fourth grade. But the line graphs where they plot, the points and then they draw their lines to show that across, do they do that in fifth
I
grade?
do double line graph.
Double line graph, I think that would be something, a starting point maybe for fifth grade, to make sure they do create something like that. If they're comparing two sets of data and it's with the lines, I mean, it could be, maybe that's what we're creating in fifth grade, because that's hard for third grade, and they can't do it in third grade. Bar graphs are easier, because they just go up the line.
And they have to understand.
Because you give them
it's
graph paper.
different.
Yeah, it works out good.
So is that one of the things to put in there, is how to create a double bar graph? Not double bar graph, yeah, double bar graph or line graph? Is that, I'm just asking you doing it, is that something that,
They can do it.
yeah,
How does this
But
sound?
the main thing is making them always realize, what are we doing here? Are we showing something that shows change over time, or are we comparing some data? sets?
Comparing data sets and being able to analyze that, interpreting it, and now tell me about what you just found out.
Listen to this one from California. It says organize and display single variable data in appropriate graphs and representations, e.g. histogram, circle graphs.
Okay, that's
Middle school.
middle
Histogram
school.
and circle graphs
Explain
would be.
which types of graphs are appropriate for various data sets, which is what you read
It's
that,
the
didn't you?
EG.
So we could think about, so what are the graphs that they're gonna create at earlier grades?
that's what Jen, what I
How
read
much
from
are we
you,
already talking?
there's a
Double
difference between
line graph.
creating the graph and interpreting what the graph says.
Yeah.
All the.
So-
Creating is much harder.
so
Yeah, that
the
kindergartners
creating
be
and
okay, they'll follow.
What does this tell me that I've done
How
this?
many cloudy days did we
By,
have this month?
changing
How many
time or
sunny
whatever
days
the
did
case
we
may
have?
be,
Some
so
of
that
the
two levels,
graphs,
two learning
actual
levels.
life
Two different
events,
levels,
or
yeah, if you're
Okay.
gonna have
Some
to create a
kids have
graph,
done
plus they
something
pick out the right one.
Yeah, and they've got to be able to pull all the
Graph.
information to be able to create the graph in
Yeah.
the first place, and then to be able to interpret that information once it's on the graph.
Yeah.
So that's what we're asking them to do. So I don't want them to be able to choose whatever graph, because at this point, that's not,
Well,
Not-
whatever.
I would think you
appropriate,
could
yes.
do,
yes.
again,
Like a
from-
double bar graph
from
would be fine, or
bet-
double line graph.
yeah, if you're, I think you could choose and determine between a limited set. So what are the graphs that we've had them create before? And could a student at 5th grade say, using this information, I know that I need to create either a bar graph or a line graph, or, whichever things that we've already taught them.
Yeah, one of the lessons I teach, it has questions that in there like that, it'll say, using this table of information, would it be more appropriate to use a bar graph or a line graph? See, that's that part of, okay, is there some kind of change taking place over time, or am I just comparing the wins and losses of these football teams, you know?
So a bar graph and a line graph, we could probably compare, and then we could have one in there creating
If you have them create, that's a tougher one, that falls under DOK 4.
That's fine.
That's a little. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but that way you're hitting one of those higher level learning if they create it. They can do that.
She needs a buzzer.
I
need to buzz you.
Well, I
Are
was
you
just saying,
asking, can they do it?
no, I'm asking, I'm asking the standards we want to put in. Are we wanting to put one that has the compare of the existing ones that they know, and then create of a new one that you said that we might introduce?
Yeah.
Just the limited information that I have from fourth grade, this is actually Common Core 3rd grade level. They have them representing and interpreting data, drawing bar graphs and everything, and the information that I have says that that's a 4th grade item. So the bar graphs and that, they would, as far as,
So that way
when I get- they have some knowledge of.
Yeah.
They already know how to make
Fifth
them,
grade,
yes.
right.
Can they
Oh,
choose a bar graph or a line graph, what would be more appropriate to the
Right.
task, is what we're asking.
Would they have created line graphs at the time, or is line graph 5th grade?
It shows it at 4th grade, using specifically with fractions, like 1/2, 1/4. I read that just a little bit ago.
And the only thing that I had from like the 3rd grade was the word problems and solving, the time intervals represented those on a number line. And they felt like that was a 5th grade item. So,
Line graphs would make sense at 5th grade because that's where we're talking about plotting coordinates and that's really what you're doing.
See,
Right.
that's what I was thinking too, is that would be,
Why not put them on?
yes, that would be a 5th grade item.
Okay, so let's write a standard on, or GLE, whatever we want to call it, on writing or creating a line graph. So what's the standard say?
I'm trying to think of the correct words
Create a
to
line
use.
graph, to represent a
that 3rd grade
given
one
data
has
set.
solved word problems going addition and
What did you
subtraction,
say?
time intervals.
Construct.
Line graph.
She says,
That's what it's
create a line graph to represent,
That's the exact
Yeah,
same page.
yeah. Construct and interpret a line graph.
well, she said, create a line graph to represent a given data set.
Is a line graph and a
I
line
mean, fix
plot,
it.
are
I
those two
just
different
trying to
things?
come up with
Well, let me, I gotta
There's
see
a
it in
line
writing.
plot.
Carolyn,
Create
did
a
you say?
line.
What's the difference between a line plot and a line graph?
That shows how many times something occurs over it's on a number line. And
Is
you
the-
plot how many times it
The
occurs.
5th grade standard says make a line plot to display a data set of measurements in fractions.
It's kind of like a bar graph that you're doing numbers instead of categories that they're graphing.
And they typically use X's, right?
Right.
Yes.
So it would go
Make a line plot.
like that, that's a line.
I'm gonna let you discuss and step out for a moment.
What did you say?
So Janet, if you're talking about,
Line plots,
talking
you
about
can
line
find
graph,
those
it's just a
very,
line
very
graph.
quickly.
A double
Line
bar
is
is
the
just
one that
compares side by
repeats
side,
Yeah.
bar graph, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what we would
No,
say
no,
No,
double
I
bar
do that
graph.
third.
Yeah, and then the
That'd
line
be
graph
really
really has, usually something to do with
We
time.
do it
on
third.
progress.
Steam and stem and leaf plot is like.
Trend,
Yeah.
yeah, trend.
It's the first way to collect data. to be
Yeah, it's
quite
a-
honest. How many
Yeah.
kids have like
Exactly.
shoes or how many kids have
Or
pockets
stock
or,
market.
you know, like, it's one of the
Yeah, my
best
401k.
You said create a line graph and
To represent a given data set. It's the starting place.
that's,
Would you read it one more time?
Yeah, create a line graph to represent a given data set.
So then the next step would be to analyze that graph.
I don't know, I'm trying to get this step.
I understand.
worked out.
Or is that, I mean, is that
Yeah.
the analysis of one?
Compare, analyze.
Is that part of the same thing or is that a different one? And I'm just probably being picky, I mean, because I can draw a graph, but I don't know what it tells me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's here or not. I just don't, I don't know.
We could
I'm
say
asking you guys, I
We
don't know if
could say
that's a.
something like read a given line graph.
That just sounds like the higher level rather than.
Well, creating one and being able to use it, interpret it, analyze it, what are the words?
Create and interpret.
A line graph.
Read and interpret, is that what you just?
Create
Create.
and interpret.
Oh, and create and interpret.
See that, yeah, that's why I thought, yeah, create and interpret.
Line graph to represent a given data set.
Or maybe not given, just a data set, that way they can collect their own data. And then figure out what it's telling them.
Did you guys want to go to the comparing two data sets with double line graphs and double bar graphs?
That is,
I think they can do
I think they can do that. When you were discussing, I did go into the notes that are in that HB1490 Math 612 with their minutes, trying to see what they were discussing. And it just shows that they had talked about like ox and whiskers, they did talk about that, and stem and leaf. And they had even mentioned double stem and leaf, but felt like the double bar graphs would be more appropriate.
For them or for us?
For them. So they would be doing double bar graphs at sixth grade.
One out of them.
Yeah.
My kids are
They'll be out.
They like to make bar graphs.
That's how
let's
I'm
just
reading their minute, like it's, you know, they question the box and whisker plot. They report the CCSS statistics domain follows the American Statistical Association document, the notion of variability. And then someone mentions the box and whiskers in their gradebook program useful and questions the stem and leaf plot, thinking that they probably shouldn't have that. And so, yeah, that's what I was trying to find where they were doing line graph. I didn't see any mention of line graph, so I don't know if they were anticipating we would do that. I don't know.
Line graph or
Mhm. Line graph. I think line plot
that goes with
is
stem
kind
and
of,
leaf.
yeah, it's
Because
kind
I've
of
got
been
that pulled
younger.
up right here.
Well, it's on a Common Core, Missouri Common Core right here for fifth grade.
For fifth grade,
And this is
They
line
do-
plot.
They
They're
do
using
some of those
fractions
earlier
with
too.
it.
but that's with fraction, and so whole number would be, I think that it really is in,
Make a line plot.
I know our
Display
kindergarten
depth
teachers
of
do
measurements
something.
and fractions.
Do we, is there anything else we wanna say about graphing then, or just leave it with what we have? We're introducing this one new type of graph.
Create and interpret a line graph to represent a data set. Is that what we have?
Yes, that's what I have.
That's what I have.
Sorry, I had to pull
Is that
up
what
my
you have?
next document here.
Create and interpret a line graph from a data set
To represent a data set.
to represent it.
Yeah.
I was just trying to see if line plot was anywhere numbered, because I know we do it, but that doesn't mean it's the same.
I don't remember it being low.
I remember, like in kindergarten, we collect them with Post-it notes, like the kids put up Post-its
Yeah.
on a plot, you know, so I know we do,
Yeah, but in fourth grade, a line plot is
but
listed.
isn't that with the fraction?
In
Like it's
fourth
the
grade?
very specific one. Third, fourth, that whole MB, that's pretty much the same standard.
Yeah. Work in second grade?
I'm looking.
This
Let's
one
see,
just
record-
shows
generate
this
and
example.
Measurement data by measuring lengths of several objects. Draw a picture graph and a bar graph is in second grade.
But it has shown the measurements of making a line
Yeah,
plot.
there it is.
Where the horizontal scale is marked off in whole number of units.
Right,
And so what happens in the upper grades is once they start to learn about the fraction, they're actually collecting the measurements.
right,
And displaying them.
right.
It's happening in third grade. Like, I did a lot of that in third grade, interpreting line plot, so I'm,
It's introduced in second grade,
yeah.
so that's why they would have that skill as a way to organize.
And the
data
kids
sets.
liked it, so that's not a difficult task for third graders.
It's just a way to collect the
Yeah.
information, because you can take the line plot and turn it into a bar graph
Yeah,
pretty
it's
easily.
pretty easily.
So are we happy with just this one statement about graphs then? And the other thing that we talked about was more measures of center. And I'm not, don't have other standards in front of me, Common Core, median, and mean are in sixth grade.
It's in fifth grade, mean, median, and mode is talked about in fifth grade in California.
I guess we would come
Know
to
the, it says know the concepts, so,
In Massachusetts, it's 5-6, and so it's listed, but again, it's the grade band. It's definitely appropriate for sixth grade.
I see it on Massachusetts fifth grade.
NCTM, here's what it says here. Students apply their understanding of whole numbers, fractions, and decimals as they construct and analyze double bar and line graphs and use ordered pairs on coordinate grids. So that's what that says.
We have everything but the double bar.
So,
What do you wanna do, Ann?
I don't know.
Ann wanted to take data and statistics off fifth grade.
No, I just put it out there. We don't have much in it. It's
Yeah.
all good.
I think it's fine for teachers to teach it in fifth grade. I don't think it needs to be assessed in fifth grade, the mean, because they're learning to divide. I mean, your biggest chunk of your instruction will be teaching them to divide.
It's actually
Two-digit
probably,
divisors.
it's probably something we should just put down and then highlight, because if they have it in sixth grade to be assessed, then we sure don't need to assess it
In fifth grade, that's correct. So let's do that. Let's use that statement and just highlight it and say check and see if sixth grade is. So that's the median, mean, mode, maximum, minimum, and range.
we're using that one from California, no.
Massachusetts.
So, would you say it again? Describe and compare data sets using the concepts
A median, mean, mode, maximum, and minimum.
In range.
And it's interesting, just
Top
say,
end.
it says
Well, you
students
could probably
engage
just
in
put one.
problem solving, communicating, reasoning, connecting, and representing as a.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So it's really a problem solving,
It
another way to
is.
solve problems,
It
using
is.
data to solve a problem.
So this is a step up from just calculating those, because they're actually having to do it with two data sets and then make some statements about those data sets based on the mean, median, mode. So it's
So
not
should we do
just,
describe a data set? I still think that this would be in sixth grade. I don't think they would have taken mean, median, and mode out of sixth grade, but they could. So if it's in sixth grade, I don't think we would need it in fifth grade.
So I mean, again, it's been a few years since I talked, but we did calculate these things.
Mhm.
We did not, have two data sets and compare them. At least not in my class.
And the idea is that we don't wanna do the inch deep. We wanna, when we teach a concept, we wanna be able to use the concept. So we don't wanna introduce them to it, but not go, just keeping it at surface level. It would be more appropriate to move it to sixth grade, where they learn how to do it. They have the skills to do it because they know how to divide and multiply and all of that from fifth grade. And now they're actually applying it to data comparisons.
Cause it's not in
The one more page, I saw it
page
somewhere.
45.
I read in their notes that they had that variability piece.
It's right in
statistical variability. Understand a set of data collected by the answer, center spread, that's what they're talking about, center spread and overall shape. Because in their discussion, if you look in the Dropbox, their discussion is that they would keep that there. They were cleaning it up, they were clearing it up, I think, on variability. Let me find that back. Julie K states that the variability standards in CCSS is unclear. Bob G agrees that variability should begin with graphs and students should become literate with information. Bob G speaks of stem and leaf, also visually organizing data quickly. Margaret B suggests that the rotating stem and leaf is a quick way to make a bar graph.
For these notes from sixth grade.
But their sixth grade should be focused on gathering data, descriptive statistics, and reporting data. So they're keeping that in the sixth grade.
Is there anything for fifth grade teachers on sixth grade?
Oh, this is their work group, the minutes from their work
Yes.
group from yesterday or the day before, October 2nd.
So it seems, I mean, it seems strange to me that if we would have the concept mean median mode calculated at an early grade, we would do that at sixth grade, to not have something here on the topic.
We wouldn't have mean in any earlier grade.
I thought we talked about, oh, not mean, but the others.
Mode would be just because it's naturally one
Falls
of
in at the
the
last
pieces.
slide,
I'm not sure where median would fit. I think median might be, median and mean might be in sixth grade.
They are. It may be mentioned median, maybe mentioned sooner, but it's at sixth grade.
But where is it?
It's on page 45, clear down towards the,
In the Glees, it was
Summarize and describe distributions.
And I know the idea from the Glees to the standards now was that, again, we didn't wanna like just go an inch deep. We wanted to try to focus our efforts. So data and probability was more of a middle school, applying all the number and operation that we learned at those younger grades into this context, was the design, which is the progression that we're following. And that's what they pointed out, that it follows the American Statistical Association document.
So what are we suggesting here? So we're suggesting.
if we write anything down, we need to highlight it and note that we need to talk to sixth grade.
All right, so right now we have describe and compare data sets using concepts of mean, median, mode, maximum, minimum, and range.
And so maybe we want to change that though to describe a data set using, because we just talked about that comparing would definitely be sixth grade. And still keep it highlighted that this may not be what we're even keeping at fifth grade. It's probably more appropriate for middle
for
school.
Massachusetts, it's hard to
Right,
tell
describe
for teaching
a data
in
set.
six, we had to move to six.
Yeah, it seems like it
But
would be
here,
this.
maybe it's introduced in fifth.
Sort of, I would
It
think.
could be,
Well,
it could be
it's like-
observational.
It's like you have this information about
And that's
all these
kind of what I'm
numbers.
saying
So
too,
you're
that it's
saying,
okay to teach it
you know,
ahead of time, but
Yeah.
if we're gonna
mean
test
is
it,
this,
it would
the
be more
mode is
appropriate
this,
because they'll
the
be better with
range
their
is
skills
this.
Yeah.
You know,
at a sixth
the
grade level.
minimum, the maximum.
They need that for the box and whisker
Yeah.
plot, the minimum, maximum, the extremes.
But those aren't hard, so that don't come in sixth grade.
Well, it's not hard whenever you're displaying it, cause then it makes sense. Like if you're just having it naked, like it doesn't make sense, but if you're describing it or using it or where it's just not a number.
Okay,
So we have
so are we done with data?
two under this point. Does anybody have anything else they? So the first
Describe
one,
the data set. Using concepts. Of median. You wanna just, you got that one, okay, that's it. The first one was create and interpret a line graph to create and interpret, got it, okay.
Okay, so we're done with that. Yes, is that what I'm hearing?
Can we say
Yep.
describe and compare?
well, we just took out
We
compare.
just took it to one data set.
Okay. Alright, that's
I mean, we can compare the concept of mean, median, and mode.
I mean, you could think that, Maryland scored this, this, and this on tests, and Ann scored this, this, and this, who had the higher overall mean grade, or they could do that, I think.
Cause I think it's kind of why you have the whole data is to compare as well.
It's probably, we'll just have to probably come back once we talk to sixth grade and see what they're thinking.
Now
Alright,
we're,
good studies by everybody, do you want them?
You have what?
And we'll take a quick break.
Domain.
We're gonna make it, yeah, fifth grade done. Well, drafted. Drafted.
How many of these things do people get to the point and say, good enough, we're done, that's why we get.
This is what we're submitting by next September 30th,
Right.
that's when.
all right, so we're on geometry and measurement.
Do we want to start with classifying 2 and 3 dimensional shapes, since they should have some experience with that, rather than start with graphing points on the coordinate plane, or does it matter? I mean, they can do it however they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. So starting with what we would consider the more basic information.
Alright, so let's start
That's
with
what I was thinking, but.
So classify 2 and 3 dimensional geometric shapes. Should we say using concepts of similarity, congruence, or because we have these sort of bullet things that we
Just words that people threw out
Right.
yesterday.
No, we left it. I don't think similarity, would not suggest we put that in here, because that's
Similar congruent.
maybe congruent, but similar, if they're really to know that the shapes are similar, they're gonna have to really understand proportions.
Which
I don't know,
comes
just similar to correct in the undergrade, so. I think the basics of it.
It's mentioned in the standard. Look at that, under geometry. The attribute.
So in Common Core, they have understand that attributes belonging to a category of 2-dimensional figures also belong to all subcategories of that category.
Yeah, it's just about categorizing, not similar congruent.
For example, all rectangles have 4 right angles, and squares are rectangles, so all squares have 4 right angles.
A square that's got dimensions of a 3x3 compared to a square that has dimensions of 9x9. And you would say the square is 3 times larger than the square. That's what, like the similarity and congruent we're trying to figure out. I don't think we wrote in some.
I don't see
I
anything in California
Okay,
about.
we see it with proportions, like when we said about proportions, scaling, so maybe it's under the, fraction thing, about scale, compare the size of a product to the size of an impact, you know,
To differentiate between and use appropriate units of measure
I think.
for 2 and 3 dimensional objects. Visualize and draw
Geometry.
2-dimensional
And
values of
these
3-dimensional
things,
objects.
that's the only thing that's tested is the classification.
Museum, when I look at Massachusetts.
No, they're different.
What do they have for geometry?
No.
Yeah, this
No, but
This should have been a
assimilate
small
2-dimensional shapes to
That should have
3-dimensional
been
shapes
smallest.
and analyze properties of polyhedral solids,
Right,
describing
it's
them by the
hard
number of
to,
edges,
for
faces,
kids to
or
visualize
vertices
that
as well as the
3
types
times,
of
because there's
faces.
so much into additive.
Then it gets into volume
They're
next.
adding it instead of
I
taking.
understand that
Those
the
are all
cube
your
one
very
unit on an
where
edge
you got those figures.
is the standard unit for measuring
Did we
volume,
move
so that's
this
the
out to
volume.
number 1?
They decompose three-dimensional shapes and find surface areas and volumes of prisms.
Let me go back and look in the notes of that.
As they work with surface area, they find and justify relationships into the formulas,
Sixth grade.
the areas of different polygons.
Yeah.
They measure necessary attributes of shapes to use area formulas to solve problems.
Here they're mainly talking about the units of size.
Well, and that's in, like when they're naming the
Yes.
different triangles and things they talk about.
Size of types, similar shapes, congruent shape, overhead and okay, these two commonalities, are they congruent?
So I guess what we need to know then, under this one, classify 2 and 3-dimensional geometric shapes. Excuse me. What are the things that we want them to know about 2 and 3-dimensional shapes?
In fifth grade.
One thing is relationships among shapes that that's not something you can write down yet, but the idea that squares are rectangles and that if it's a rectangle, all the properties hold no matter what the rectangle looks like or how, yeah.
That's why this one says visualize and draw two-dimensional views of three-dimensional objects made from rectangular solids. So if you can recognize and draw it, you're gonna know all of that.
Well, I think that also goes to the point that I was reading from the comment before, where it's understanding that the attributes belong to a category. So they apply to all the other shapes that are that same.
I like that description.
Right.
And here you have parallelograms and then you have all these shapes, so that hierarchy type thing too, that seems important. That seems great.
NCTM has one sentence that goes with this piece. Students relate two-dimensional shapes to three-dimensional shapes and analyze properties of polyhedral solids, describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces.
So if we're gonna get into 3Ds, then we're gonna get into polyhedrons.
I don't know how to spell that.
Dodecahedron or dodecahedron.
I know, I had all those big numbers. I'm just like one of my kids.
to spell
Do I
all
have to spell that
those.
correctly? I love that word, dodecahedron. I know my kids are like, say that again.
Sounds like a geometric dinosaur.
It does, it does. That come from the dark ages?
I hope they invent something kind of like the gallon,
But if we are classifying 2 and 3-dimensional geometric shapes, that's pretty much what we're talking about, is faces, vertices, and edges.
Yeah.
Read it again, Myra.
Students relate two-dimensional shapes to three-dimensional shapes and analyze properties of polyhedral solids, describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces.
I got relate two-dimensional
I didn't
shapes
know
to
you wanted to
three-dimensional
type it.
shapes.
I'm saying relate and analyze by the number of,
Edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces.
And under the GLEs, that's where we used to, the nets came in handy. And you could show that two-dimensional where you peel all those faces off and they, the question might be, okay, what three-dimensional figure will this net make?
But when I was sitting in the 612 group yesterday morning, they were talking about that because they were using the nets for surface area. So I know they were talking about nets in 6th and 7th grade yesterday.
It would make sense to use.
Because they were talking about
Yeah.
volume and surface area, and the nets were used to help calculate the surface area. So you had to relate two-dimensional to
Two
three-dimensional
three-dimensional shapes and analyze properties of polyhedral solids. You need to spell that.
I got it.
Describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces.
It's a mouthful.
So what I am asking, did it say edges, faces, and vertices, or edges, faces, and vertices?
Face.
Okay, that's what I thought, and then they have to name that face as well.
Yes.
So, are we making that one of ours? Is that an entire thing, or are we revising?
Well, if we're gonna classify 2 and 3 dimensional shapes, that's what we're gonna be doing.
Where does it say that in the Missouri?
It does. We didn't, we added
It does,
that
we
in.
added it in.
Help them out.
3D.
We brought it back in.
We had 2D, we had 2D, or we classified two-dimensional into categories based on their properties.
We brought it in to help sixth grade, is that what you're saying? So we're talking about sixth grade, they said we
Yeah.
okay. But it is in the fifth grade,
NCTM.
NCTM. It was in our Missouri please before also.
That, I think it's more of, that's why we brought it in, we didn't talk to sixth grade about how, but we brought it in knowing that
It was there.
we've done it before, and they've done naming the shapes at a younger grade.
Sounds like the commas and the
This is
semicolons.
This is
the
right?
first
Yeah.
sentence under the geometry. Right? The rest of it, a lot of the rest of it deals with volume,
Wouldn't
and
it
then
be
it gets
like
into
properties
surface
of
area.
polygons and polyhedron solids? I think would relate two-dimensional shapes to three-dimensional, so this is really only under 3D.
We wanna say polygons
I think more of the work in fifth grade needs to be on polygons, because
Oh, I
that's
was
the
able to see that.
square,
Okay.
the rectangle, the triangles, the names of the triangles. I think it's good for sixth, seventh, cylinders, circles are in seventh grade.
So is sixth grade gonna take it off of theirs? Sorry.
We don't know.
We don't know. Because it's in sixth grade.
But we're thinking for fifth grade, wouldn't fifth grade be like the hierarchy of properties, like the square is also the rectangle, which is also a parallelogram, which is also a quadrilateral, that classification in the hierarchy. I think that probably trumps some of the 3D stuff, because that's so critical.
That's what I taught in 3rd and 4th, 5th grade. But you
And there
just
is
said,
some properties in those
well,
grades
yeah,
that
that they knew a
all of
square
them
was a
grasp.
rectangle, was a quadrilateral, that all came in
With the
3rd grade.
rhombus.
Yeah, and another name for it, the diamond, but it's not diamond, well, that is the
Okay.
rhombus.
But then, see, now I can't think of the other names, and my quadrilaterals are all leaving. It's not a parallelogram, it's a trapezoid, that was the name I was
Okay,
looking
so a
for.
third grade standard, understand that shapes in different categories, rhombuses, rectangles, others may share attributes. And that those shared attributes can define a larger category. So you recognize that things are more than one category. But in fifth grade, they actually create the hierarchy. So this one, it says that they belong to subcategories or particular groupings. They're putting them in groups.
Like when I,
So are we not
And
gonna
then
do 3-dimensional
fourth
shapes in
grade.
5th grade?
No, I think
Oh.
that we can do three-dimensional, I just think that we're heavy on the 3D, we don't have a lot on the 2D, and it seems like there should be more on 2D.
What does 4th grade say? Because I'm doing reading that's in 4th grade.
Classify two-dimensional figures
That's
based
why we
on the
put it
presence or
there.
absence of parallel perpendicular lines.
but with the 2D,
bring
we
in
do
the
like
trapezoid.
triangle, what, think of 2 ways that you can classify all these triangles on them on the other hand. Well, they should be able to come up with, well, classify them by size, or classify them by their size. You know, which group do they go in, and that's really what we're gonna.
Well, they
right
should be
now.
able to label it isosceles and scaling at that point too.
Yeah.
If I'm introducing that third, though, I would think 4th grade would be taking on some of those labels, is what I'm
I was gonna say, isosceles, I think would be, make it introduced to it. And start that way.
It's, to me, it's kind of like when they're first doing it, they look at a particular triangle and say, okay, that's isosceles. And then this fifth grade standard is what Janet's saying, they see all of these triangles and these are all isosceles because they all have, so it's just like, I'm saying this whole group is isosceles. It seems like that's a difference between.
Of all these different triangles, they may be different sizes, like I have a big one and I have this, but I'm gonna group these over here because they have all 2 angles.
So
See, I did that in 3rd grade. I mean, so maybe that's just because, I don't know, I was doing that last year.
I think the Common Core says says what we're saying, and then we need to reword it. But I think the 2 points that they have are things that we should put in. One being, understand that attributes belonging to a category of two-dimensional figures also belong to all subcategories of that category. So it applies, like I say, with the 4 right angles, it's squares, and so that's a concept we want in.
Yes.
Do we-
And how do we?
Can we say it any better, or do we leave it as it is for now?
Well, we have that on here.
Oh, that's fine.
For now.
So I get, specify two-dimensional figures in the hierarchy based on property.
Yeah, I think that one's fine too. Like to be honest, I don't have a problem with the way either of those are worded, putting those in.
I like the hierarchy so that it,
Yeah. The second
that
one's
automatically
especially-
makes you think of how they're doing all the different relationships between them.
The first one, especially when you say, a category, all subcategories of that category, like it's somewhat confusing, and then the example makes it clear.
Yeah.
So if there was a way we could say it clearer to begin with. Understand that attributes belonging to a category of two-dimensional figures belong to all shapes of the same type first.
Sounds better. Also belong.
If we put it in, we have to put the example.
I basically right now, I took the two that are there and I put them on our list.
Did you keep the example there?
I did. So right now what I have is, I have the two that we just brought over from column 4, and then I have the one from NCTM, which is the relate two-dimensional shapes to three-dimensional shapes, and analyze properties of polyhedral solids, describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces. So I have 3 right now.
Are there any nice examples in the California one? They had a lot of nice examples.
So it looks like California is looking at area. So when you look at their measurement in geometry, they have area.
And they're dealing with, the formulas.
Right. Construct a cube and rectangular box from two-dimensional patterns, and use these patterns to compute the surface area for these objects.
That's next, yeah.
Understand the concept of volume, and then their appropriate units of measurement. Let's see what else.
Digging into the different types of lines,
Or the triangles, parallelograms.
angles.
Right. Or is that primarily just the shape, the
That's
basic shapes,
basic.
but not the categories, but the shapes?
I
Triangles
haven't
are what?
categorized them yet and classified.
Yeah, no, parallelograms for trapezoids and all
Yeah.
that, but really just those two, you don't get any of the exotic shapes in 5th grade necessarily.
No, not really.
Okay.
There's exotic shapes.
I
wanna
know what
those are.
Yeah.
I've been teaching math for a long time, let me know what these exotic
Let me
shapes
show you
are.
what You gotta make math interesting. Math never changes, you gotta spice it up a little.
I showed an exotic shape once I got sent to the principal's.
Is that what I'm gonna find out when I talk to Dr. Van Leer? Or those conversations going on?
I was going to remind you that the camera's running, but I was just hoping it wouldn't get that far.
Maybe get some social studies.
So,
No, I
all
just don't
right.
know if you separated specifically, if you
Yeah, I get
identify triangles and parallelograms
Quadrilaterals, and then we have
only, and
our,
that's all you talked about.
I think they
That's
talk
okay.
about octagons,
Okay.
pentagons,
Alright.
but I think we actually named them before
Yeah.
5th grade, but
Yeah, they are.
They're named, but I didn't know if you know.
to
So
operate,
would-
how many triangles?
Would we on this one, that understand that attributes belonging to a category, would we want to include three-dimensional? Because if we're talking about three-dimensional, they could say these are all prisms because.
So understand that attributes belonging to a category of 2 or 3 dimensional figures.
I'm just saying, should we, fifth grade?
I think it makes sense that if it applies to this, and it applies to all subcategories of this, whatever.
Makes sense.
Can we add
Is it still?
three-dimensional to the classify one? Also?
And three-dimensional figures.
Are they three-dimensional figures, or are they shapes, or are they still figures at that point? Is there a difference between a figure and a shape? So should it be two-dimensional figures and three-dimensional shape?
We've been calling, our title was 2 and 3-dimensional geometric shapes. I think we'd be okay saying shapes all the way through.
So understand the attributes belonging to a category of 2 or 3.
Where are you at?
So I'm
Oh, on classify?
understand that attributes belonging to a category of 2 or 3 dimensional geometric shapes. Also belong to all subcategories of that category.
Shapes, geometric shapes. You were fixing that one, I was fixing the next one.
Well, so the next one would be classify 2 and 3 dimensional geometric shapes.
We're gonna use and or there. Didn't we use or in the last one?
Use the and.
Okay.
Get it closer.
Based on context.
Fifth grade.
Well, I think it's different. I think in the first one it is or, and the second one it is and. Because you're understanding that the attributes belong to a category of 2, not 2 and 3 dimensional shapes, are you? Wouldn't it be 2 or 3 dimensional?
I think so.
And the second one, it is, you're classifying 2 and, you're doing both.
Okay.
For or on first and on second.
That's what I have.
Okay.
So then we still have this third one, right, from what Meyer brought over, the relate to and 2-dimensional shapes. We'll have to fix that part. Well, no, relate 2-dimensional shapes to 3-dimensional shapes, and analyze properties of polyhedral solids, describing them by the number of edges, faces, or vertices, as well as the types of faces.
And that's basically the 3D stuff, so.
So then, we're good on shapes.
So we understand, classify, and relate.
On to graphing in the coordinate plane.
Okay.
I should just understand compute volume at this point.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
you
that's
wanna
right.
do that one?
Yeah.
Should that be number 2 then?
Understand and compute volume.
I don't know why my computer does that. I think it's to make sure that I'm awake.
Is it only number 2?
I
I thought it was number 3 at least.
Well, we did 1, A, B, and C. 1.1,
We don't understand our number sequence very well. We kind of jump around a little
For
bit.
sure it was at least number 3. I didn't write any of that down.
Okay, so we're on understand
Yeah,
and
that's
compute
true.
volume.
Okay. Understand and compute.
Let's see.
Recognize volume as an attribute of solid.
So I guess what shapes do we expect them to compute volume for?
Prisms, rectangular.
Rectangular prisms, I think, right, rectangular prisms would be it.
Kind of like this first sentence on the NCTM one, but I don't know if we want it for anything. It says students recognize volume as an attribute of 3-dimensional space.
And they have recognized volume as an attribute of solid figures and understand the concept of volume measurement.
So do we want something about
Recognize
that?
Okay.
It seems like a good place to start.
Say that, so what was the record?
The one I read or the one
Yeah,
she read?
the one you
Mine
read.
was short. Recognize volume as an attribute of 3-dimensional space.
You add to that, and then I think the second point then is computing volume, right? Computing volume for rectangle.
I think before we do computing volume, they need to know that what you measure volume with. Something about the cubic units, the unit that you use, before you actually have them compute.
Okay.
that one, then they.
So it's-
They have the same unit.
I doubt it.
Cube thing?
I doubt it.
Measure
Yeah,
volumes
yeah,
like
yeah,
cubic
yeah.
cubes.
Well, yeah, I mean-
Cubic centimeters, cubic inches, cubic feet.
Volume is really introduced in, like, it's a fifth
So
grade.
So understanding cubic units.
Something like that, the volume's measured in
By
cubic
cubic
units.
Recognize, or not recognize,
What they have in Common Core, a cube with side length 1 unit called a unit cube is said to have 1 cubic unit of volume. It can be used to measure volume is, that's what's on that, and NCTM says they understand that a cube that is 1 unit on an edge is the standard unit for measuring volume. So it seems like one of those, yes.
And
So,
California says, understand the concept of volume and use the appropriate units in common measuring systems, for example, cubic centimeters, cubic meters.
so I put,
So, you like that one?
where is that one?
Say it
That's in
again.
California.
It's page 22, under measurement and geometry 1.3.
I see it now.
Do you see that on page 31 of the Missouri Common Core?
The fourth grade.
Number 1, right in the middle of the page 31.
The California second.
You just read,
Yeah.
Just the right unit, not just really up, you don't see it.
Yeah.
You see,
You put
I don't
in
see
all
cubic
the
units.
CMQ stuff.
I don't know if we need to put IE in cubic centimeter, do you think we need that stuff, cubic yard, cubic?
repeat it.
Read what that
You want me to read it?
Yes.
Understand the concept of volume. And use the appropriate units in common measuring systems.
And then there's the parentheses that
Yes.
say IE cubic centimeter, cubic meter, do you think, and so Myra and I are asking, is that part necessary?
Just her.
So, okay,
At
so,
least one, like cubic,
It's
More
all-
likely to help than hurt.
cubic unit.
it sounds to me like, if we, then we don't need our
Use
first one that we
cubic
came up with, recognize volume of three-dimensional space. It sounds like this covers what we just said a minute ago.
I think it could.
So understand the concept of volume, and so we basically just take this, but then the end of it is to compute the volume of rectangular solids. So are we then saying that is a separate one?
Feels like it to me.
Make that a second. What are you putting in parentheses?
So I guess I'm gonna copy, I'm not gonna put C in cubic, I'm gonna put cubic centimeter, cubic meter, cubic inch, cubic yard.
So could we say, understand the concept of volume and use cubic units or something like that as opposed to an
How
appropriate
about understand the concepts of volume and recognize that volume is measured in cubic units?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, what was that?
And
unit is measured in cubic. Because I feel like we're dancing around it by saying the appropriate unit in a common measuring system.
Yep.
It's just,
Cubic units.
Understand the concept of volume. And recognize volume is measured in cubic.
do you like rectangular prisms or solids on next one? Compute volume for rectangular prisms or rectangular solids. Doesn't matter.
Well, it depends if you wanted to just do a prism, or if there was a time when you were gonna have them do like a prism with a little sticky out, like an L-shaped prism, then that's,
I have a really dumb question. Is a cylinder the same thing as a prism?
the cylinders, they're usually separated, but it's the same idea as a prism, but I don't think we put cylinders in here.
Yeah, that's why we're saying rectangular. Well,
like a rectangular.
like a box.
About that.
You're-
There
Yeah,
you go. Does mine measure the same? It's just my cubic.
well, yeah, well, I mean, but this is us computing volume, and the students aren't
They're
ready to
packaging in
compute volume of a cylinder.
Volume of
But
a
if you're-
cylinder would involve area of a circle, and area of a circle is more for middle school.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm not questioning it,
Rectangular,
but
we
it
have
should
to
be
decide,
there.
yes.
I think solid.
My own personal.
Solid.
I'm just-
Compute
So we're gonna say rectangular solids.
Okay.
did you say for, volume?
Of regular solids.
Calculate with the
I
measurement.
used what they had
The
written.
concept is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's it. Estimating is different.
What did you say?
More of a science.
What did you guys put?
That's really more of a science
second one?
concept.
Compute
Yeah, I think you're
volume
right.
of
It's
rectangular
more of a
solids.
science concept.
That's why I put the
So
in there,
essentially,
sounds
we
better.
took California's 1.3 and broke it into two different standards.
Do we need to break it into two? Yes. Yes. Answer a
Now-
rectangular.
What Janet was talking about with these nets, when I said construct a cube and rectangular box from two-dimensional patterns and use these patterns to compute the surface area of these objects. Do we need something like that in, or she
I
talked?
think surface area is another one we probably need to check with middle school, because right now it's at middle school and it's likely if there's no notes that they changed it, that they're keeping surface area there.
It sounded like they would be doing surface area, and that's more in the seventh grade.
And what about
It's
area?
starting-
Did we?
We
So
decided.
we're saying areas needed to compute
Right.
volume, so we don't need to put
We
in
don't
a
need to
separate
Because
area.
it'd be taught in third or fourth grade, used in third.
So then, is there anything else under understanding compute volume?
We have rectangular solids, is that too open? Is there, can you think of any? We're not saying rectangular prisms, or we're not specifying, we're just saying rectangular solids.
So that would, there could be then,
And I think that's fine, because you think about how they, draw a line to separate and calculate this, volume here and calculate the volume here and then add them together. I think that they should be able to do that.
like, two boxes stacked.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes some time.
When you start it with teaching it on a generic box, and then you
Yeah,
say,
they can do it. Okay. And this is something they honestly like to do, because it is all hands-on.
Yeah,
Oh.
and a lot of kids that don't do a lot of
I mean,
numbers,
they get-
operations,
they
teach
get-
geometry for some reason.
Visual, that's exactly right.
That's all.
It'll be
Spatial.
Yeah,
Spatial.
Spatial.
so
and
then
they really thrive.
Yeah.
we have two others. We said,
Would you hold on just 1 second? Common Core limits the links on the prisms to whole numbers, so they're not being asked to find volume with fraction.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
so would we put that under the compute?
Yes, so like rectangular solids with whole number side links or something like that. Whole number dimension.
I like the side links.
Okay. So compute volume of rectangular solids with whole number side lengths.
Is that okay?
No problem with that. So then our two others are, and I don't know which goes first, graph points on the coordinate plane or convert like measurement units within a given measurement system.
Well, the convert like measurements was convert among different size standard measurement units within a given system, and use these conversions in solving multi-step real world problems. And would they, the Massachusetts have a conversion one?
I don't know where she found it.
That's on the first 5 MD1 with the
Oh, okay.
standard.
Sorry.
So it's convert among different size standard measurement units within a given measurement system.
So what's an example? What,
5 centimeters to,
How many millimeters is that?
I thought that's what you were saying.
I guess I don't know what else we would put underneath that. It feels like it's kind of what we want, the way we stated it.
but that's the standard, so we need an expectation.
Well, I would say, are we working with both within standard and metric?
But not
And-
between them.
Then are we converting, so within standard, what are we converting? Are we converting
Different size
inches to
standard
feet
measurement.
and feet to yards to miles? Are we going all the way to miles? Are we
We can. They do miles in fifth grade.
Because we multiply multi-digit numbers. So we can do the 5,000.
That could be huge.
I always forget how many feet are in a mile.
Well, and that's just it. The first test, they didn't give them any of that information. They just wanted them to know
To
that,
know
and then
the
they gave
conversions.
them, then they gave them how many feet were in a mile, all that, so they could do it.
We
The
probably
reference
need,
Not,
sheet.
if we can't remember it, how are you
Yeah,
expect
is
them
it
to
5,280?
Yes,
Is that right?
Yeah.
yes.
So do we want them to know it, or do we want to be
remember? They
given
know how to do
the,
the conversions. I mean, realistically, how many people?
Speaking from a parent standpoint and, well, listening to people that I work with, are very unhappy right now that kids don't know that there's 5,280 feet a mile and water boils 212 degrees. I think people would rather than know that than,
Damn it.
here's a sheet, this is what it is, and if we need it, maybe. Yes, I think they would rather than that.
And they need to know there's 12 inches.
well, you absolutely need to know
You know,
that.
I mean, they need to know these things.
That-
Yeah.
How many minutes
From
in
their
an
standpoint,
hour?
they want them to know those without having to
and
go. Okay, now I get it.
we should probably be pretty specific.
I mean, the one I forget, honestly, is the mile one, but other than that, I can remember everything else. Because they're never gonna remember the mile one either, that's one thing that probably slips in everybody's mind. But,
But we knew it was in the thousands.
yes, we knew, yeah,
Estimate.
we had an estimate, and we can get the miles one by estimating and get close. But they need to know that stuff,
At fifth grade, which ones do they need to know?
up through the miles, right?
And then what about weight and capacity?
Well,
Do
you
they
need
ask
to
them
know,
all
what
of
you
those? need
need to know is, you need to know how many inches are in a foot and how many feet are in yards, how many feet are in miles. And then from there, you can figure out how many inches and you can figure out how many
And
yards.
you're gonna know
Exactly.
metric too.
And they need to know weight and capacity, it's not just length, we're
Right.
talking about
Yeah.
all of the
Time
measurement.
all of measurement.
Yeah.
16 ounces.
Yeah, you're talking how many days in a year, how many hours in a day, how many minutes in a hour, how many seconds in a minute.
Yeah, just list all those units.
Well, we could limit it, we could focus on, and we just have
Like
to
I was
pay
thinking-
attention to it in the other grade levels.
Right, because I was thinking inches in
Yeah,
foot, you
yeah,
wanna
that's-
know that before fifth grade.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so that wouldn't be, I mean, you'd wanna use that in fifth
So,
grade.
oh, I got an idea.
Oh,
How
Open and heard, open and heard.
What's getting ready to happen?
Well, how about since we're doing volume, that we focus on capacity, live gallons and quarts and.
That's what I think when you say volume, right?
The capacity measurements.
And that we do the lengths.
Length measurement at another grade.
Well, I think,
So could we change our
what new do they need to know in
standard?
fifth grade if they haven't already
Well,
picked up?
well, I think that
Up to the point that they're gonna be tested on.
maybe
still
we have
have-
3 separate ones for capacity, length, and weight.
But
And,
then it might move down to a third or fourth.
it
and,
just depends on how far we go up with it.
If we did capacity, we'd still have metric and standard.
Science
That
people,
might
I
be
don't want them
enough.
to know metric.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what did you, in like third grade?
We
Measurement,
went up through
what-
yards and
Okay.
I,
But that's,
today.
So a lot of what we're talking about is not in fifth grade, it's prior to
It's
fifth grade.
Mhm.
I mean,
I'm sure there's size, I mean, how big you get, but the concept has already been out there
Yeah,
before fifth grade, is that what I'm kinda hearing?
yeah, well, it is, you just, like, we didn't go into miles, I don't think, in
Yeah,
fifth grade, but,
It's metric, we're doing thousands and hundreds. I'm just wondering if the types of numbers of the measurements
Yes.
would change in fifth grade.
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so this is essentially expanding a little bit on what our heading is, where, Diane was saying earlier that convert like measurement units within a given measurement system kind of says what we want. So what if we just add to it by saying, convert measurements of capacity, length, and weight within standard and metric systems? Convert measurements of capacity, length, and weight within standard and metric.
The fifth grade focus is basically the
So do they need to know,
Say it one more time for us, James,
I
please.
said convert measurements of capacity, length, and weight
Okay.
within state.
Capacities. It's getting late, it's getting late in the afternoon. We shouldn't have stayed up for the ballgame last night.
Convert measurements of capacity, length, and weight within standard and metric systems.
Thank you.
So then we're saying that they need to know liters and milliliters, centimeters and meters, inches, feet, quarts, gallons, kilograms, grams, pounds.
Weight mass.
Is it, yeah,
But we're having-
something's not right there.
That we're having them stay within like measurement systems,
Right.
right?
Within,
When it's metric.
I just wanna make really, I wanna make sure,
Just try to remember.
I wanna make sure somebody's paying attention to me.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
That it's clear that we're staying within the standard or metric system. I wonder if we switch and to or, we might get rid of that misconception that we're going to wander between the two.
Well, I think the only reason you'd want and is to say that they need to do both.
Right,
So,
but I don't wanna get them.
right, I understand what you're saying.
How
So I
about
don't
if
know
we
how to
put
word
the,
it.
if we put the given back in there within a given measurement system, comma, or parentheses, standard and metric? So we've got the given back in underneath
Within
there
a
as well.
given measurement system.
And then what did you say?
And then, are you saying within parentheses?
Probably then parentheses, standard and metric.
So then we just have one under this area, but it covers a whole lot of information.
I think
That's-
when we go down in grade levels, we better come back and look at this.
We'll have to, yeah. That's just how it's gonna work, cause you're gonna have to go back and forth, yeah. That's how we had to do it when we wrote activities for our pacing guys, following the curriculum and the standards. When you write your activities, you gotta make sure that you're.
So is measurement, the concept of measurement, that domain goes through all grades,
Yeah, because we put measurement with geometry,
Kinda
that
like
will
gravity.
through all grades, okay, so basically we're just building upon whatever you started with, each one gets a little more difficult, or expands, or whatever the case may be, okay.
Right.
Do we wanna put anything about solving problems, or is that just gonna be implied that they're doing this to solve some sort of a problem?
So like, if, you know, I had a ball of
Problem
dough
solving.
that was 16 ounces and I made a pizza of 8 ounces or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Something.
We're gonna have that, we're,
Solve
So-
problems involving proportional relationships and units of measure. Is that where you see that?
There's one up here that says, use these conversions in solving multi-step real-world problems.
What about,
they are
No,
gonna
that's
need multi-step.
Common Core. I couldn't
just
find anything
add
on
that
this.
what about
sentence
using
after
certain
the same one.
I'm not saying
tools
it's
to
not there, I
measure
just
with?
couldn't find it.
Is that something that they need to be able to, or have they already done that, to use, I mean,
I don't know, it sounds.
I'm not necessarily talking about just, here's a ruler, I'm talking, it could be a thermometer, it could be,
I would,
Should have already had.
that's already, okay, that's
Should
what
have
we're,
heard grades.
those two,
I would think some of the
Measurement.
tools are in science as well.
Yeah.
oh, absolutely,
Ruler.
absolutely.
So, here we're working on the separate I think separate, to say solve problems.
Cause each one of these domains, there's gonna have to be story problems in each one of them.
Converting is one, that's one idea, to go convert ounces to whatever.
You just use conversions to solve multi-step word problems is another bullet.
Say what you said again.
I just use conversions to solve multi-step word problems, and I don't really like it, but that was the meat of what we were saying.
So,
So
Do we need to have-
use measurement conversions to solve, use,
conventions of measure, I don't know if you need to say conversions. Use conventions of measurement or to solve multi-step problems, or so, or how about solve multi-step problems involving measurement?
Isn't that on the AV? So,
Or
we're
we
just
have
making
those
sure it's state
principles,
them and
yeah,
everything.
we just don't have those principles created yet, so,
We probably could highlight it then.
and then we could knock it out once we have a guiding.
Well, we need to have something in that says solving the problems, whether or not we say in regular and real world context, that's,
Using measurement.
but we need to say something clearly about solving problems.
And we want it multi-step problems, because most conversions involve more than one step. So solve multi-step word problems using measurement, is that what you're saying?
How about involving measurement conversions or including measurement?
Is, and you've got one side of this box is a foot, and the other one is 6 inches.
Yes.
They gotta convert one or the other.
To make sure they're like,
And recognize that they
and
need to
recognize
do
that
it.
they have to do that, okay.
That's kind of proportional relationships also might be good to note in that. Because
So so do you think we need conversion in here, or just is solve multi-step problems involving measurement enough? Does multi-step imply that those are conversion, or do we
I
need to
don't think it-
specifically say?
I don't think
It
it
doesn't,
does.
but the or the standard that these expectations fall under do say within the measurement system, or converting measurements, so I don't. But I think this would just emphasize that it is with measurement
So
conversions,
solve multi-step problems. So I'm sorry, I lost it then.
including measurement conversions, or that including, I don't know.
Requiring measurement
That
conversion.
require,
I mean, the whole conversion concept is pretty vital to science, and as you move forward, that you're
technical.
exactly,
So
because
that
you're
multi-step
computing stuff in
word
the same
problems, that-
well, I just said
dimensions
problems.
and the same measurement things. I mean, that's
Because you
absolutely
might think
vital.
It might not be a word problem, it might be a illustration. So I would say solve multi-step problems that require measurement conversions.
That's that word. I like that.
Yeah, I like
Mhm.
that. Not many people that do it.
Then is there anything else under measure, this, the convert like units of measurement, anything under this area? So our last one,
Last one.
graph points on the coordinate plane.
I had graph points on the coordinate plane within first quadrant.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
You got
We said within the first quadrant of, what did we were very specific, so people knew what we were talking about with the first quadrant.
Yeah.
Of the coordinates. We said
Oh.
coordinate plane within the first quadrant.
Okay, graph points on.
No, we just had, we had.
Originally-
Graph
Deja
points
vu,
within
Caroline.
the first,
Because originally we talked
We
about,
did talk about them
Positive.
yesterday.
we talked about positive
Yes.
numbers, and then we went back to that because that wouldn't include 0.
okay, graph points within the first quadrant of a coordinate plane or on,
I had graph points on the coordinate plane within the first quadrant. Is that graph points within first quadrant on the coordinate plane? It doesn't matter if those two propositional situations.
Yeah.
We talked about that when we were talking about data today.
no, I think it was yesterday, we discussed
We were
this.
talking about
We talked about data.
plotting the.
We did talk about
that.
that. Good thing we're being recorded so we can remember what we were talking about.
I gotta go back and watch that recording.
Yeah, read that back to me, would you?
The graph points on the coordinate plane within the first quadrant.
Sorry, I had to, I was like, I have to get up and do some John Jacks before I drive home. I only got it. Pretty sure that's what I did with it.
Yeah, it's one of them.
Yeah.
There was a really, really bad trip going home last time. And traffic was just parking lot, I just shut my truck off and sat there for a long time. And when I finally, 30, 40 minutes later got up there, it was a semi truck. And the entire cab was gone. You couldn't even make out there was a have, you can barely see like the axle,
Oh,
it was bad.
What highway was that?
No, beautiful weather yesterday.
Yeah, what was the,
I don't know, 'cause
what was
there
the
no other
highway though?
vehicle.
Oh,
I liked his
Okay.
part about interpreting the coordinates within the context. That Janet she gave some really nice examples yesterday about maps, and if you're right here, what does that tell you?
Well, even more basic, I was wondering, do we need students to know which is the first quadrant, or are we only giving them that?
I think it hurts, I mean, I
So-
tell my kids that's what it is, and I show them how later on you'll learn these other three that go with it, but right now we're only gonna work with this one. I mean,
And,
don't you
and,
think most teachers do that? Just
and we need
give
to
them
know
a
X and
big
Y
note.
axis, right?
Yes.
So we need to know X and Y axis, they need to know which is the first quadrant, and then they need to know, first number. They need to know which number tells you which way to
Over
move.
and up.
Yeah.
They
Right.
need to know the origin.
Right.
Well, I
Okay.
kinda like that,
Origin.
understand the first number indicates how far to travel from the origin in the direction of one axis, the second indicates how far to travel in the second. But we could say on the x-axis and the y-axis, I mean, we could specify it there. But I do like from the origin, keep going back to that. I don't think we need to define all the vocabulary within the standard, that's just part of the expectation.
Mhm.
But interpreting the coordinate values and then being able to plot those values is gonna be important.
So if we're asking students to be able to plot, then it implies that they know which way to move. I mean, it implies that they know the first number tells them, over and up.
yeah, if you're dyslexic,
That's true.
but it's all good. We do apply, they know how to do it, but
Right,
do a
that-
song over and up.
Yeah.
You have to put the movements in, Jane.
Right, well, what I'm saying is, we don't need to, I don't think we need to necessarily say, understand, that's what the number indicates, if we're asking them to plot it. If we're asking them to plot it, they're showing that they understand it, right?
Yes.
Graph points and identify coordinates.
Well, so should our cause our cluster heading says graph points on the coordinate plane within first quadrant. So should we say plot, ordered pairs, and interpret the values of the points in the context of the situation or something like
Say
that? Should it be plot? I don't know, plot or graph. Plot, ordered pairs.
We would also want them to be able to give the coordinates of something that's already plotted.
Yeah.
And if you move 3 to the right, 5 up, what would you do?
So they need to be able to read it.
And I wonder if that would be first. They'd read it and then they'd be able to plot it. Okay. Plot order pairs and is where I got.
So there are a couple skills. So one is being able to identify one skill. The other is being numbers and then plotting it on.
So like, something like describe the location of a point using an ordered pair.
Is that the first one?
And then I think what Janet was saying would fit right in there as well. If you've got this ordered pair and then I tell you to go 3 over and 4 up, where does that put you? That would fit in there too, I think.
The location of a point using,
That's raising
Or
the
the-
difficulty. of
that's
looking at
like, I
coordinates.
think the relative location, right? Or it's in relationship to some other place.
Cause they do that, so I think later we combine it with geometric figures and we show like, triangle on there, and we say, okay, if the figure were to move down 3 and over 4, what would the figure would end up on?
Which are the transformations in
Yeah.
sixth grade.
Do you
They
think we
know what those ones are.
do you need to, do the children at this age need to know the relationship between intersecting and parallel for perpendicularity, work on that, or something they already know?
Well, they should already know that. So they should come in knowing.
Okay, I think I might have something. Identify coordinates of a point and describe its position relative to another point within the quadrant. Like,
Say that again.
so identify coordinates, maybe, identify coordinates of a point and describe it.
This is the second one.
Well, I think
Describe the location of a point and identify the coordinates is the same thing essentially. So you're saying
I have identify coordinates of a point and describe its position relative to another point within the quadrant.
right.
That gets it both the simple and what Janet was.
Right, so it's saying you can, now you find a point, you can give me the ordered pair. And if there's another point, you can say, you could say what, how many over and up it is or down. Well, I guess.
And then do we have another one that's interpret coordinate values of points in the context of the situation, or do you think that covers it?
I don't think it does, because this could just be really naked numbers, just do this on this graph, but when Janet was talking about the math.
And walking from the total over to,
Yeah.
like more of the distance type of things, interpret coordinate values of points in the context.
I think this goes back to the other questions earlier about, we are expecting you to do this in isolation with numbers and in real world context and everything. I mean, I think that it really is our expectation that you learn the computational skills or whatever it is,
And to apply.
and you learn to apply it. And so,
And if we're not careful, they might just be tested on one versus, or instead of a balance of both too.
And to me, this is it's a little bit different than just a real world situation, because they're having to interpret where this point's located. They're not solving a problem, but they're interpreting this location in a context. It's a little bit different to me than some of the other contexts we've talked about. It's a really specific use of context. it
Yeah,
seems
because
like.
I think it relates to the latitude, longitude piece.
Yes. It feels like it's
Like
important.
you need to know two things, that this point actually represents two different distances, in relation. Like it could be the age of a person and the height of a person. You have that point on the graph. But each variable is a different measurement. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, we'll
It has
revisit
our
it
2
all
point.
when we're done.
I really like this one because it's like 2, 2, 2.
well, okay, so I don't have both here, I guess, I think, I missed one.
Interpret coordinate values of points in the context of the situation. It's just the last line of number 2 in the Common Core.
And that's real similar to what California's got.
I didn't
Change
hold
the
it. We have
situation to a
identified coordinates of
situation,
point and describe
since we don't
the
have
position
one yet.
relative to another point
Oh, we
within the
have.
quadrant. And then
Interpret coordinate values
values
of points in the context of a situation.
Yeah,
I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna put it in the
the
Dropbox.
implies that you have a situation listed, so that's why.
What, on the one that I had written, was there a better way to say it? To identify coordinates of a point and describe its position relative to another point within the quadrant?
We didn't specifically say plot any place in here, we don't actually have them graphing, so would we want to say graph a point, or identify coordinates of a point, since we don't actually have them graphing anything anywhere.
What about identify and graph coordinates of a point?
Or identify coordinates and graph. No, I did not, it's not right.
Maybe it just needs to be a third one.
You could put the graph after describe, identify coordinates of a point, describe and graph its position relative to another point.
So we have identify coordinates of a point is one. So you said describe and graph its position. I don't know if that works. So we want students to be able to look and see a point and say, here are the coordinates. We want to be given the coordinates and say, here's the point. So I identify coordinates of a point and graph a point from a set of, or from, I'm going to say ordered pair, or I'm going to say from a set of coordinates. So you're saying you're going to be able to identify coordinates of a point and graph a point from a set of coordinates.
And then what about the end of that though, because that was.
I'd say we put it into a separate one now. That's, and I don't know if it's describe or if it's some other word other than describe. So you could say describe one point's position relative to another point within the quadrant.
Reevaluate, evaluate its position, relative to another point.
I mean, because you think, you might want students to locate. You might say, okay, you're starting here, and then given you these additional steps, where's the other point? Or you might say, here are 2 points. And so how do we write something that says you might do both of those?
I think what you said is actually fine, describe one point's position relative to another point within the quadrant.
One point's position.
Relative to another point in the quadrant. Well, we ruined your 2, 2, 2. No, wait. We had 3, 2, 2, 3. So there's some symmetry here in this one.
Can we back up just for just a minute and let me review? I didn't type this in. Do we have in there in measurement,
I had that look in.
solving problems with, finding the area of triangles and finding the area of parallelograms? Do we have that somewhere within this now?
No, we don't have triangles.
Why don't we have that?
Right.
Finding area.
Because it's probably gonna be at 6th grade.
Okay.
And that's another one we need to keep track of.
Finding area what?
The
Finding
triangle.
area of a triangle, finding area of a parallelogram.
Oh, that's not 6th grade, that area is in
In
4th
Common
grade.
Core, it's in 6th grade, so if they can't.
Area?
Not
Yeah,
triangle.
area.
Area of a triangle.
Area, that's before 5th grade.
Well, area of a rectangle or
They
a
do it in
square,
4th grade.
but I don't know if area of a triangle.
Find the area of right triangles, other triangles, special quadrilaterals, and polygons, it's 6th grade.
Really?
But the area of rectangles is also within a grade model at the 11th grade, in 3rd grade.
Third grade wants them to define the
And you can do it whenever, it's just it's tested at that stage.
I don't know why we're gonna do volume if that's what we're doing area.
Well, they do area, just like trapezoids and those kinds of things, and triangles are in sixth grade, they do area rectangles earlier.
What about
Radius, episodes, all middle school. That's where, we just need to check with them to see what they've done, so we don't wanna lose it if they didn't keep it, but we need to check where we
So the radius of the circle and diameter of the circle and all that is middle school?
That's when it's assessed, because they do it in finding area and circumference, and those formulas are all in middle school.
They're using the irrational number when you start working with pi,
So,
and they haven't had that yet.
Well, that's a good point.
we're
That's-
now just about at 3.
That's true.
We met our goal of getting 5th grade, so,
Yay.
so I would say your instructions or whatever before we meet next time is to try to get some feedback on this. But I think we should also have a homework assignment, so that,
have the similarity.
I would suggest we break up the kindergarten through 4th grade, and someone needs to go through each of them and do what we did before we started working on our grade level expectations. So we need someone to pull together from the different standards, the domains and standards, so that when we come back, we don't have to do all that. We could just look at them and then come up with what our
Yeah,
look
domains.
at domains and standards are. Does that make,
Well, the domains are pretty set, aren't they? Because that's what we've got right there, so it'd be the standards, right?
and we're saying that these domains are going to go across,
All
Yeah,
five.
at least down to 3rd grade. And then we might drop number and operation fractions at the end of the grade, and we might keep it, but at least it's.
You wouldn't add any more going down.
No.
Because we
You
said
could take
part-
away.
Yeah, we took counting and cardinality and thought,
Yeah.
when we did relationships and algebraic thinking, or number and operation, but we thought counting and cardinality would be encompassed in one of those.
so the assignment would be essentially to take these 5 domains, to look across Common Core, California, Massachusetts, and our GLEs, as we did before, we saw Missouri and Massachusetts were basically the same, but take those things and plug them into the appropriate place on ours, so that when we come back together, we can just look at them quickly. So
I'll do 4th.
I'll take first.
I'll do third. I'll do kindergarten.
Yes, I'll leave
Who's writing this down?
You got that?
I'm trying.
Lessons third. I got third.
I got 4th.
And I'll do 2nd.
And will you email this so we'll remember?
Yeah,
Well,
if you
we'll put
wanna
the
go
notes in
through,
the
start
box.
with 4th grade and then go down the line.
4th
and
is
then
Myra.
make it easy.
No,
Yeah.
fourth
Right,
is
oh,
Ann.
sorry, 4th is Ann. 3rd is Leslie.
Thank you, Myra.
I would be happy to
Second
confer with Kate first.
Is Marilyn. 1st is James. And kindergarten, did you say that, Myra?
And all we're doing is just pulling out those, we're not making any decisions, we're just creating a document.
You're taking,
It has everything on it.
and like we did before, where we have it all in to look at to create ours.
Okay.
And then when we come back together, we'll all be looking at it, and we can say, well, you know, I really think this fits someplace else if there's some disagreement. But it's just so we don't have to sit there and do all of that together when we come back next time. So, great.
Are we
So we're doing.
formatting, do we put it in Dropbox or just bring it that day, or what do you want?
I would say if you could have it ahead of time to just save it in Dropbox, that
Oh,
would be
then
good.
we send it to her.
Yeah, you can send it to me and I'll put it in the Dropbox.
And we're comparing, just what we did there, we have that in there, comparing Common Core, California, and
Taking
Massachusetts.
this stuff back to
Right?
Okay.
somebody to look at.
You're sending out what you got, or
Someone
somebody
else
I'm
is gonna email us.
putting it in the Dropbox right
You're
now.
doing it,
I
okay.
sent it to what I had to Marilyn already.
Myra sent it to me and I'm.
I just wanted to make sure
It's
when we
got-
go
it's
talk
gonna
to our
be fifth
people,
grade
we're
after
all
that
sending the
and
same
notes.
document. Not yours, not hers, they're all different.
Academic standards is what it's called, the document that we just did
Okay.
for 5th grade. It's just 5th grade academic standards. I thought it would encompass
And I
all
got
that.
it already.
Well, and we do have tacked on there that overarching principles at the end from California, which we might want to delete off. If students make decisions on about how to approach problems. Students use strategies, skills, and concepts of finding solutions. Students move beyond a particular problem by generalizing to other situations. Like, I don't know if we leave that there, but we do need to inform people of what we have talked about. Our overarching principle is that these skills are applied both strictly to solving problems, or I don't know how you word this, and then also to real world context.
I think that would be a nice discussion to have K-12 too, so that we're pretty consistent on that.
Yeah.
So whenever we meet with them, that should be one of their.
Well, his discussion for K-12, they shared an email, Chris, they are meeting on Monday the 20th. They are not meeting on Tuesday the 21st. So there's gonna be a articulation between the two groups. It will have to take place on Monday.
Yes.
So if we think about I think we should get together with them early on Monday, the 20th, is that what the date was? And
Yes,
share some of
Monday, 20th.
these things.
Yes.
And I think that one thing we share is our overarching principle.
Which I think needs to be spelled out. I
Sure.
really do like how Massachusetts has that front matter. I think that we could have front matter very similar with the practices,
Yes, I
similar
think so
to the
too.
eight
I think that
mathematical
needs to be laid right out there for.
But it would go K-12. It wouldn't just be for K-5.
Right. So we lay that out. The other is the structure of what we've talked about in terms of, you know, how,
Common language.
right, a common language on the standards.
What are the standards and what are the domains?
And then all those 6th grade, 5th grade issues, what's where.
So the bridge between 5th and 6th. So who's been in touch closely with?
I just was reading their minutes from their Dropbox, and as soon as we get our notes, I'll put them in our Dropbox, so they can access ours and we can access theirs.
Well, I'm just
I
wondering
haven't
who,
really
who,
accessed that.
who should be the person to contact them? Should I contact them and say, we would like to meet at the beginning of our next meeting to discuss these issues? It's been,
That's 9 o'clock in the morning, so is that the time we wanna do that, just right, not right in the day?
do
Start
we
right
want,
with that.
Yeah, do you wanna do it first thing, or do you wanna kind of bring back some of our comments before we go talk to them, or just kind of talk before we go meet with them?
Okay.
Not
Yes. Yeah, not first
So-
thing, I don't think
so-
so either.
so we spend an hour here
Okay.
talking about what feedback we've gotten, and then go meet with them to discuss these?
Yeah.
Does that sound
Sounds
right?
good.
What time did you say they're meeting?
That's exact. I say it again.
You said they're meeting at 9 as well?
I don't have the time.
It says,
but
we
I'm
are planning to meet on the following dates from 9 to 4, October 20th, January 30th, February 27th, March 23rd, and May 26th.
Wow.
So they're meeting amongst them.
So,
We had November 7th.
so I'll
Start.
So I'll send an email talking about these 3 points that we just mentioned and ask to meet on October 20th at 10 a.m.
So overwhelmed with this. Once a month is good.
And as far as you know, it will be possible to meet the same day.
So I
don't
guess we
know
can look
which
at these
building
dates
you're
Oh,
and
okay,
see
which
if
one?
they fit
That's
our.
I did make the
Can I
request,
go
it
try?
seems as if most of the
Good.
people wanted that.
I think it's
Still
good
really
work.
close to the parking lot, so I have that one there. So I don't know who wanted it.
One day, I'll look.
October 20th, I start back at my education.
And are there any other needs, so I can
That's
put on
gonna
my
wait me out.
requests?
I took a look, but if you read it off real quick, then I think that we're good. So
Yes.
Early that morning.
Yeah.
everyone, just so we know that we have everything we need for our next meeting room.
Are there any requests for needs? Here is this, I can supply if you need any supplies, poster paper, the webcam, projectors, power strips. And it's just a logistics list for everyone. Sign-in sheets. There was another request, and I put on here that the secondary and elementary can meet in the same building so that cross collaboration can take place. The request preferred building was GOB because it's closer to the parking lot. No promises, but we put it down. Anything else?
Is that the one we read earlier?
Yes, that was my first.
Top of the building.
All right.
We plan to meet October 20th. We're on October 20th at what time? 9?
Yeah, I have time.
9 to 4, and the 21st was 8 to 3.
Do we need to do the 21st, or is just once on the 20th gonna be sufficient?
I'm not gonna be here the 21st. And I'm leaving at 2 on the 20th.
I just personally, I think it would be a whole lot better just to meet once and
Let's see,
I
October
thought it was a
20th.
hardship for some people, that's why we opted for the 20th. Am I wrong on that?
I mean, I just leave early on the 21st too. I don't know, I guess the question would be, would it meet more often than multiple days at the same time? Because I know it's hard for some of you to get off 2 days. I mean, that's hard. I understand that.
No,
That's-
This is just getting
But it
difficult
is
for
travel
my
time.
dog too. It's not like it.
I mean, some of us travel a little farther than others.
So-
When you do come up here to save
I don't
miles.
hear anyone saying yes, let's meet both days.
Let's do it every day.
I
But
hear,
we can take a look at their days, if they've already set up days,
I
and
did,
it's,
yeah.
and then we can, let's look at what the secondary doing, and maybe we can meet those same days, and they're just single days.
yes.
And maybe that works, and we're not booking hotels, cause nobody's paying us for this, and so it's really getting to be hard, and I can't keep paying to do this.
So what were the dates
And
again?
I know you guys.
I just emailed them to
Okay, great.
I
Okay, great.
piggybacked off of Jerry's email about running late, because I knew everyone was in there, and
February
just said,
27th.
these are the dates the
Okay.
high school said.
so, but for right now,
I
we
just
need to
did.
We need to
decide.
decide about.
For right now, we're saying we're gonna meet the 20th, we are not meeting the 21st.
Then we need
Yes.
to email Lori and make sure whoever's not here, Hunter.
Because I just emailed that we were meeting the 20th and 21st.
Oh.
Correction.
That's fine.
All right, so let me go to my sent mail
Yeah.
and reply all.
Do we need a motion or just consensus that we're gonna just meet the 20th?
I think we have a consensus, right?
Yeah, do we? And not meet the 21st?
We're not meeting on Tuesday,
We're just gonna meet
on the 21st,
9 to 4 or
9 to 4.
Nine, yes, nine.
9 to 4.
9 to 4 on Monday, October 20th.
20.
Only.
And then look at those other dates, and then we can kind of email back and forth on those, because that way I'm meeting with my superintendents next Wednesday, and I can ask for some.
We did say we'd meet on November 7th. Are we changing our minds now about November 7th or October 20th and November 7th?
What was their next day after?
Their next date was.
January the 30th.
Yeah,
Oh,
January.
so that's a while.
Nothing until,
That's too long.
That is too
That's
So I
I
think
think-
if we keep the November
If you don't
7th,
live here.
this would be our
Your
goal.
momentum.
We could do 3rd and 4th grade on the 20th, 2nd and 1st grade on.
Well, you're.
That's a goal.
You're
We-
busy.
we-
Gotta set ambitious goals in life.
We got through the 5th, you know, 2
So
days
we've
here.
got a pattern and we're gonna come up, we have a routine and we're gonna come up with the front load already.
That's a
so-
very good
And
goal.
if we all kind of do some homework between now and then too, because
We can do it.
Plus, we had
You
to
have to
set where
have
we
faith.
wanted them to be at
It's
the
kind
end.
of a starting
Now it'll
point,
be
yeah, you got the end point, now let's just work backwards.
come in very familiar with.
Except I remember we're gonna lose part of the 20th. Cause the time that we spend with 612, we won't be working on whatever grade you said.
Maybe we should.
So-
Sarah,
I'm
Hey,
sorry,
Hey,
but
it's
We'll
our,
just do-
it's
we'll
our
just do
goal.
one grade, Marilyn, on that first day, on that 20th,
Yeah.
20th, we just get one.
Well,
done,
think
we'll be
about
way
the
ahead.
3rd and 4th grade for the 20th and
You said the same
7th,
thing, we'll be way ahead. if we
not
did
3rd
that.
and 4th grade for the 20th.
Yeah.
I think it's for me.
The other ones are on Friday night. Everyone
If
Fridays.
we're on a roll, then it's not spending an extra hour, it's not as much of a deal for me to get home late.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. I think we're gonna need at least a day for each one. We might be able to do kindergarten and first grade.
some of them are pretty smart too.
So we're good at the 20th and November 7th.
Okay, that 4th grade is gonna just.
I can't do the
Not
7th.
possible. You can't do the 7th.
You said every other day they picked was a Friday.
No, some of them are Mondays. There was only one that I saw that I had enough for, that I wouldn't be able to be here, but. It's January 30th, February 27th,
Alright, so we have our homework assignments.
March
We
20th.
come
We have
back.
made great progress,
Yes,
yes.
good job, everyone. See you all
Marilyn, what are they?
on the 30th.
January.
Are you officially
We're-
adjourning now?
Adjourned.
Alright, so
October 20th,
per our discussion this morning,
January 30th,
here's my answer to one of the questions
February
about
27th,
standards,
March
GLEs
23rd,
versus
and May
framework
26th.
versus show me standards.
Thanks, Caroline.
So seems like most everybody's already understood that you're working at a GLE level. So is my
No, you can, I mean,
I'm still waiting.
I wasn't gonna
Were you
shut
gonna
down
make
my
this
mail until Bridget.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I skipped and went and had a nice breakfast.
But
I got the memo.
Yeah.
I didn't think I saw it.
Well,
Actually, I borrowed them from Audrey's home
I-
and returned them.
it's rare that I get to go out and have a nice breakfast, so I skipped, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
my breakfast was a dollar sandwich from McDonald's. All right, yourself. So as I get the answers to the other questions that we discussed in the meeting this morning, I'll email them.